I'll call to order the business meeting for the Faribault Public Schools School Board here on January 22nd, 2024. If you look at our agenda and the sheet that's online, we welcome those of you that are online and those that are in the audience as well. Just for informational only, we have our strategies and then the link where the meeting can be viewed live on YouTube. And then I've called the meeting to order. And Ms. Steves, will you determine if there is a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is.
Thank you. At this time, would everyone stand if you are able, remove your hats for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So move.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Any discussion? Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Item number 3 is approval of the 2024 General Obligation Facilities Maintenance Bonds. Mr. Gertis and the Director of Finance and Operations and Mr. Jeff Seeley from Ehlers. Would you come forward, please? I will, as they get up here. Thank you for the reminder. So board members, as they're getting seated here, let's have, before they begin their presentation, let's have a motion for approval of the 2024 General Obligation Facilities Maintenance Bonds.
Mr. Chair, I'll move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And at this time, then, we will listen to the presentation, right, Mr. Wolf, and then vote afterwards. Very good. So, Mr. Gertis, good evening, and thank you.
Good evening, Board. So with me tonight, I have Mr. Jeff Seeley with Ehlers, our financial advisor. We're here to talk to you about kind of the next steps in our process of selling the facility maintenance bonds that we've been working on since March or April of last year. So Jeff is with us today to share the results of the sale of the bonds that happened this morning that Ehlers facilitated on our behalf. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him kind of go down that road with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. So this morning we took bids on the bonds. Now the bonds, of course, are financing your indoor air quality improvements, your HVAC project that you worked on going back a while, and I believe it was approved in the summer, then submitted to the Department of Education for their approval. So we moved ahead with that, and about in November, we submitted some preliminary estimates, rates of, if you've been following them, as you know, they've been coming down a little bit. This week they kind of bounced around a little bit, but overall they've been coming down after they spiked fairly rapidly. So we actually had some very good bid results for you. So you have a resolution in front of you, and that is to award the sale to the winning bidder. But just to go through the results, we did receive 9 bids, and the winning, which is a considerable amount. So you have a sale day in front of you. I'm going to hit a little bit of the information but there's 9 bids. Key Bank out of Cleveland, Ohio was the winning bidder. And they submitted a bid of 2.73, which is excellent. And that's a true interest cost. So the high bid, the 9th bidder was about 2.9. So there was a little bit of a spread there, not a whole lot. The amount of the bonds is $10,770,000, and you received a large premium. Now, what a premium is when the underwriter, that is the company that's buying the bonds, now they're going to resell it to others. Okay, so they're a middleman, if you will. That a premium is when they pay a higher price to you than what you're asking. So you're getting money up front. And the reason they do that is in this market, we're still in that market of low interest rates, even though they spiked quite a bit, over the last 6 months, we're still in a period of low interest rates. So of course, investors want a higher rate of return. So it's easier for them to sell bonds that have a higher interest rate or coupon than what the market currently is. So they bid 5% interest rates on this. But in return for the higher coupon, if you will, or interest rate, they're going to give you $800,000 up front, or $817,000 actually. And what that does then, it offsets the cost of the higher coupons. So the true interest cost, as we blend it all together, is 2.73, which is excellent. We looked at this in November, and we were estimating at market rates about 3.8 at the time. So it's come in quite a bit better. And that drop in rates has probably been the last 4 weeks or so. So the closing date is February 15th. That is when the money will actually be transferred and available. You had a drop in your debt service taxes coming up here. And if you look at the attachments on page 5, you'll see that we put it in a graphical format for you, page 5 or 6 actually. Next one. Okay, so we'll start on this one. So you have the building bonds. If you look over to the left, you have your existing commitments, and you can see your building bonds are getting paid off. So what we're doing then is folding this in as those are paid off. So your overall tax rate for debt will not be going up. It's what we call tax neutral. So it's not going to drop like it would have if you didn't issue bonds, but you can see way over to the right, once we folded in the new facility maintenance bonds, you're actually seeing a slight decrease over the last couple of years of tax rate, 7.42 to 6.4 and then 6.51. And it's estimated that will continue at that. These are 6 years, 6-year bond term. So this will be paid off in 6 years, and you'll actually see a little bit of a drop in year 6. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that graphically. The orange, of course, is the new facility maintenance bonds. That's getting folded in. Those payments are getting folded in as your existing debt is dropping off. And then we estimate that will stay level for several years and then drop off at the end of that. So for future planning, it's always nice to plan any capital needs or future capital needs when you see your existing debt drop off, because it's a little more palatable to taxpayers. Instead of adding it to a higher rate, wait till you pay off some old debt and then look at it. So for future planning, that's just something to keep in mind. As far as the amount of money that you're getting with that large premium that goes towards the project, you're actually going to receive about $418,000 more than what we estimated, because that premium that they paid you now can go towards the project itself. So that is a summary of what we experienced this morning when we put this together and accepted the bids. And if you have
Question,
any-
where's that extra money going?
Your project actually was priced out at more than what you asked for. You actually trimmed it back and decided to finance a little less than what the project was, so it will just go to help with the overall project costs if they come in more than that $10,770,000.
Board members, are there any questions? Comments, questions?
Mr. Gertis and Mr. Seeley, some may be familiar with it, some may not, but AAA credit is as good as it gets, right? That's the gold standard in credit terms, in terms of S&P rating.
Yes, you carry 2 bond ratings. One is for the State Credit Enhancement Program. That is a program that will step in should there be a default for school districts, and the state will step in and make the payment. So that's your AAA rating. And then on the district itself, it's an A+ rating. So you carry both those ratings. And because you have that credit enhancement rating, the rates you're going to receive are better than if you sold these without that. And it doesn't cost you anything. The program doesn't cost districts anything.
How does a A+, the underlying rating, how does an A+ rating compare to most other public schools that you work with or within the state or anything like that?
With public schools, it's about average. We see a lot in the A+, a lot in the AA-, which is one step above, and a lot in the straight A category. So it's probably right in the middle of the pack.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Gerdes and team for keeping our district fiscally conservative so that we get those kind of ratings. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And I'll mention that that is an excellent rating. If you look at organizations across the board, you don't necessarily see A ratings in many of them. But schools, of course, generally, because they're government, have a little higher rating. But that is very solid investment grade rating. It's easy to sell bonds with these types of ratings. If you start getting into the Bs, then they become a little harder, but you have several steps above that B. So an A+ is an excellent rating.
Thank you.
Just to add on that, I did put in the attachment below of the, from S&P, which details a lot of those metrics that they looked at. You can see we scored very high in a lot of those areas, which drove that. So you look at that in your free time.
Board members, any other questions or further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would just say this is a better case scenario than we anticipated, and I think we should be very happy with that. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion by Mr. Wolf, a second by Ms. Boudreau for approval of the 2024 General Obligation Facilities Maintenance Bonds. With this, we'll vote. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
You got a roll call.
Oh, roll call. Again, I messed up. Okay, roll call. Ms. Steves, thank you.
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gerdes and Mr. Seeley. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item number 4, the recognition awards and presentations. First, we have a presentation by Dr. Dick Houston from the Faribault Rotary on Plant a Pocket of Prairie. So, Mr. Houston, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Bellingham and the rest of the board for giving me this opportunity. Before I start, I want to recognize a couple of people in the room. Mr. Minty, who was the one that gave me the authority to get started on the project.
Yes, let's go.
Lewis, Nick Jerms were very instrumental in the Jessica Lewis and Nick Jerns were instrumental in getting this going right off the bat. And Teresa DeMars, Teresa, will you stand? From Soil and Water, did a yeoman's amount of work in making this work. So it was a collaborative effort, and it just couldn't have gone any better. So this all started when a friend of mine gave me this book, Plant a Pocket of Prairie. And it's a really cool book. It's meant for children. And I'm going to read just one page. Won't take more than an hour or so. So it says, plant a goldenrod. A Great Plains toad might flick its tongue on the goldenrod soldier beetles. Not enough prairie for you yet? Plant cup plants. A thirsty chickadee might come and drink from a tiny leaf. And it goes on like that, and it's brilliantly illustrated. And it was written and illustrated by 2 Minnesota women. So once I got that book, I had this idea that a lot of kids should know this. And we could teach them about the prairie, and we could teach them about the importance of the environment. And so I went to Mr. Jamie and Benty, and I said, I got this idea. And he said, well, go talk to my principals. So the first principal I talked to was Jessica Lewis. She and I had done a project when she was at Jefferson, a tree project that was just so much fun and also successful. And she was on board. Then I went to see Mr. Jerns, and he was on board. And then I thought, this is really good. We should see some other folks. So I went to all 8 schools. The schools that we went to was Roosevelt, Jefferson, Lincoln, the STEM school, Nearstand Charter, the Homeschoolers, Trinity Lutheran, and Divine Mercy. Every school was on board. Talked to the principals or the teachers, and they said, yeah, let's do it. So what followed then is that it became a big project, needed some help. So I went to Soil and Water, Rice County Soil and Water, and Steve Paz and Teresa were both there, and they came on board, and they added some ideas. And they said, one of the, I think it was Jessica Lewis said, wouldn't it be fun to have flowers? And so I went to them, and at Soil and Water, and Steve Paz says, yeah, we can get flowers. And we're talking 350 kids now. And so that was awesome. And so Steve and Teresa got on board, and then they got Tri-Lake Sportsman Club involved. And Tri-Lake Sportsman's Club provided money to buy the flowers so that we could plant them. But we didn't have pots, we didn't have soil, so then I went to see Donahue's. And they were just awesome. She said, yeah, we'll supply the dirt and the pots. And they filled the pots with dirt and gave them to us. So, and Rotary supplied the books and some expertise and that kind of thing. So we all got together, a bunch of us, one day, and we got all the plants looking like this, and we planted them, and we came up with a pot like this, a 4-inch plot, and each pot had the names of the collaborators on there: Faribault Rotary, Tri-Lake Sportsman's, Donahue's, and Rice County Soil and Water. So we got them all planted, and then Teresa put together a fact sheet that looks like this. Tells about the particular plant, how to plant them, how to take care of them, and then just the value of the prairie and how they contribute to the environment. And Mr. Jerns then said, you know what, we can translate that for you. So we got it translated with his efforts into Somali language and also into the Spanish language. And so then we had 350 plants, and then Teresa and Steve Paz from Soil and Water and Emily Nesvold from Rotary went into these schools and sat with the teachers, and they went through the books and taught the kids about this. And then each child went home with a flower. And they got the idea that they could have a part and contribute to the environment in their own backyard or on their steps. And if they put this into a pot or in their backyard, because a lot of kids don't have a yard, so they live in apartments, and so they could put this on a deck or in their front step and grow this flower and contribute to the environment and watch for a butterfly to come along and that kind of stuff. And it was just awesome. The questions that these people that talked to them, Teresa and Steve and Emily talked to them, they got amazing questions. They were just so enthralled and so excited about what these kids and how excited the kids were about this whole project. So every kid went home with a plant. Every kid went home with a fact sheet in the language spoken in their home. And so then then Teresa put together this blog that you got in your packet from Jamie. And she tells the story really very nice. So the upshot is that I put this table together at district Rotary events. And Northfield is picking it up, and Soil and Water is doing a big job in getting that going. Rochester's picking it up, and Stillwater's picking it up. So what your staff did, your teachers and your administrators did to help this project along is absolutely amazing. I mean, they just said yes. And now we're doing it again, and they're already saying yes. And so the third graders coming on board this year are going to have the same opportunity to do this. So it's been so fun, and the collaboration has just been dynamite. And so, as a Rotarian, this is the kind of thing we like to do. And education, personally, is huge to me. It's just huge. But as Rotarians, we want to collaborate. We want to do projects in the community that gets people together, can be educational, can serve a function. I think you also got a sheet of that looks like this in your packet of some of the things that we are doing, with the little libraries and the buddy benches and the Strive program, treats for children at E, the trap shooting team, scholarships in music and arts and Strive scholarships, youth exchange, Warmer community, Rotary readers, Hispanic. Last fall, we went into the high school, worked with Dora and Principal Olson and decorated the hallway and gave ice cream to all the treats, ice cream treats to all the kids as they left school that day to celebrate the Hispanic International Independence Days. RILA, which is a youth leadership camp, Little Feet soccer program. So we do a lot, and we're looking for more ways that we can contribute. So if any of you have ideas, see me or see some Rotarian. But I'd like you to see me because I guarantee you that that we'll get her done. One other thing that's happening right now that I'd like to tell you about is that we're collaborating with the Rotary Club in Prior Lake on refurbishing a school in Cambodia and to make it accessible for physically and mentally handicapped children. We also gave money to build a soccer field over there, and that's done already. That has been completed. But the cool part is that Martha Brown, from one of your teachers here, works part-time, is going to go to Cambodia. And she's going to join some teachers from Prior Lake, and they're going to go over there and help teach their teachers how to teach. And so I think that's pretty darn cool that Martha's taking the time to go to Cambodia to serve. That's special. So thanks for all that you do. I sure appreciate everything that everybody on this board does. And we want to continue to collaborate and do projects like this because, my gosh, this worked out well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Houston. Board members, any questions or comments for Mr. Houston at all? Other than thank you to you and the people you brought here and the people who work on this project and the Rotary Club, et cetera, for not just this program, but all the programs you do and what opportunities for our kids.
Thank you. We enjoy doing it, obviously. But if anybody has any questions or comments or suggestions, call me, whatever, email me, text me, or just say I want some lunch, and I'll be around.
Mr. Chair, can I just, go ahead.
Certainly.
Go ahead, Ms. Boudreau.
I was just going to echo some of the chair's comments that the district truly appreciates the partnership with the Rotary Club. We appreciate all that you do. There's such a list, and what you do for our graduating seniors as well. Appreciate that. This is a special project. I like how you collaborated with so many schools and engaged businesses, engaged agencies, service organizations, and everybody got a blazing star. I have my own little prairie garden, and I really like the blazing star plant. It's a beautiful plant. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Another thing, if anybody likes to see a prairie, I've converted my farm, 150 acres, into prairie, wetlands, and trees. So I have 100 acres of prairie. So if anybody's interested in hanging out on a prairie for an afternoon or something and maybe finishing the day with a glass of wine or whatever, you're all welcome to come. Maybe not all at the same time, but anybody and everybody's welcome to come out there and see the prairie. It's a big, really, really cool. I've photographed over 200 different wildflowers on my farm now since I started. And so it's fun. And it's important that we continue to do projects like that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Houston, I would like to just thank you and the Rotary. One other organization you're supporting in a big way is the Little Falcons Activities Program or Extracurriculars Program. And so thank you to all of Rotary. But Dr. Houston, I'll try to leave my bias aside, but you're a good friend of mine. And anybody in this room that has not been involved in volunteering should look at this young man right here and have a conversation with him, because the amount of joy that he gets from giving back and making a difference, and there's no doubt, we have lunch often, and there's no doubt that he cares about education, and education being the great equalizer in this world. And I've been lucky enough to be out to his farm. I've been lucky enough to help with prairie burns, and luckily we've not burnt any neighbors' houses down or anything like that. They've been controlled burns, right? But really, if you're in this room or you're watching online and you want to know the joy that comes from volunteering and giving back, have a conversation with Dr. Houston, and it's wonderful. And so thank you for being a great mentor to me in that area. I appreciate our friendship, but I appreciate all that you do for our community, and you continue to do. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Moore.
Yes, I just want to thank you, Dr. Houston, and all of the people that assisted, especially our principals, and Mr. Jurens. That was really nice to put it in a form for the Somalians and the Hispanic students. And as I said before, I'm really interested in saving the monarch. That's kind of my pet project. And so when you brought this up with all of the prairie, I was very excited. And maybe that's another little avenue you can go down, because we're losing habitat for the butterflies. And as I know John knows that I'm trying to save the monarchs plus the other butterflies. So that's probably an avenue you can think of with the students. We have to plant more of that milkweed. So thank you so much, because it's very important for our environment. Thank you.
Anyone else? Let's give Dr. Houston another round of applause. So with that, we'll move on with the meeting now. And so can we take those down so we can, I know we have other presenters coming up here. Thank you. So next on our agenda, 4B is the Student Board Representative Report. We do not have our student reps here this evening. I know they're in activities, so from there, so we'll move on to 4C, the Proposed District Reorganization Update. Mr. Benty.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, those that are representatives of our District Leadership Council, if you would please come up and have a seat. So give a little bit of background here is that we travel all the way back to April of last year. The school board asked for me to look at possible reorganization pieces for our district based on different criteria. And I spent some time during the spring, summer, and into early fall, and then worked with a group of administrators and program leads in our district. We meet every other week. We call it our District Leadership Council. So when there are decisions that are made from an administrative lens and an administrative vantage point in our district, this is the group that is sitting there helping me work through concerns, helping me work through problems. Here in a couple weeks when we talk about budget, this is the group that will be back up here again with a few more faces to discuss the proposals that we work at. So this is really the workhorses of our administrative team that help me get a lot of the pieces done that you have asked me and tasked me to get done. So I would just like to kind of pre-thank them for being here. One of the pieces is kind of as we go through the update here, and we're referring to it as this is a reorganization update. So if you remember back at the beginning of November, I gave a presentation that had a few different options on that, and there was some discussion then, and then throughout throughout mid and late November and through December, the board asked me to do a few different things, and then bring back at this meeting what is the update that we have on reorganization. So we have the update here for you this evening. I will do the majority of the presentation. They will be here for support and for questions if it kind of falls outside of my realm some, or if you have direct questions for them as well. So,
Mr. Benty, before you begin with board members, I'm going to ask that we let Mr. Benty and the administrative team go through the entire presentation first. And so we do have little notepads for you where if you have questions or something to write them down, and we'll go over then because we can go back. So let them finish the entire presentation, and we'll move on from there. So
thank you, Mr. Chair.
you're welcome.
All right, so kind of as we go through, if we move to the second slide here, and these, so you're going to notice that these the first few of these slides should look familiar. These are the same slides that were at the presentation back at the beginning of November. But looking at the historical FTE and versus ADM, and it's FTE is full-time equivalency, which is anybody. So we count them in 1.0s. So I am a 1.0 superintendent. Nicole is a 1.0 human resources director. We have 1.0 teachers. We have 1.0 custodians, 1.0 paras. If you're part-time, you're a 0.5 or 0.7. So when we add all those up, it gives us then a total FTE number for our district. And you're able to see here, like I said back in November, that these two lines should mirror each other. And we're focusing on the orange line tonight with the update here, showing that over the last at least 4 to 5 years, actually I'd say more like 6 to 7 years, our enrollment has been declining. And we want to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible with our classes, with our facilities, as we look at declining enrollment. And our reduction to our budget and to our workforce size should match the size of our student population. And you can see there that we are off some with where we are versus FTE and ADM. The next slide shows you our enrollment, historical and projected, in a bar graph. So the light blue on the left goes all the way back to 2020. We are kind of that teal blue in the middle. That's where we currently are. And you see that our enrollment is projected to drop the next couple years, 2 fiscal years, and then level out from that point moving forward. So we are projecting to level off right around 3,050 students for the 2028 school year and moving on from there. We will obviously fluctuate a little bit, but at this point we are not projecting any growth, and we are also not projecting any increased de-enrollment or unenrollment past that point. All right, and those are accurate as of right now when I'm saying that, and they will change, of course, after I'm done saying that. So if you have the magic 8 ball for enrollment, then Mr. Gertis would love to talk to you. And then the birth rate calculation, because there was a lot of pieces around COVID, and would that create a baby boom? This graph is obviously here. There's a ton of data in there, but really what we're looking at are the red numbers across the bottom, and then the numbers that are below that show the change from the previous year. And as you can see, all those negative numbers across the bottom, and you look all the way back to 2011, where we had 1,812 students from age 0 to 4, and now we have 1,435. There is not and was not a baby boom due to COVID, and we are not projecting a baby boom beyond that. I will say this is not a Faribault phenomenon. This is not a Minnesota phenomenon. This is not a United States of America phenomenon. This is a worldwide piece. So everyone in the world is struggling with what this looks like in their country, county, school district at this point. Once again, our current district structure, we have 7 sites with 7 different schools and programs. McKinley is our early childhood center. Roosevelt is pre-K through 5th grade. Lincoln Elementary is K through 5th grade. Jefferson Elementary is pre-K through 5th grade. Our middle school is grades 6 through 8. Our area learning center is grades 9 through 12. And our high school are grades 9 through 12. And each one of those is a separate site. So the reorganization option that the board has asked me to focus on is looking at turning Roosevelt into a pre-K through kindergarten. Enrollment would be approximately 444 students, and that building has roughly a capacity of 630. So there is room for growth there. Lincoln and Jefferson would become our 2 elementary buildings, housing grades 1 through 5. Now, this is where the numbers differ a little bit, and you're going to notice that on the next couple slides where we talk about class size and class average, the numbers are not going to match with what we have on here. All right, there's a reason for that. So one of the pieces we're looking at, and I'll talk about it when we get to that, is that we're going to have Lincoln Elementary settling in right around 500 students with a capacity of 630, and we're going to have Jefferson around 450 with a capacity of about 560. So still room to grow there. And then looking at the middle school and high school, there are no grade changes there. The ALC, we would be looking to close, and McKinley, we would be looking to create it as grades 9 through 12 for our ALC. All right, the next slide is elementary class sizes with reorganization. So what you're able to see is that over in the bottom right-hand corner is if we reorganize, and we go with Roosevelt as our kindergarten, pre-K and K site, Jefferson and Lincoln as our 1-5 sites, we're able to run 49 sections. Now, this does not include any early childhood classes. This is simply kindergarten through 5th grade. We can run 49 sections. Now, there's been some concern brought up when you look at like 5th grade and you say Jefferson has 93 5th graders in their school, and Lincoln would have 94, right? And we would run 3 sections at Jefferson and 4 sections at Lincoln. These numbers are fluid, okay? And the reason for that is because we have a number of charter schools in our district, all of them focusing on elementary level. If one of them were to shut down, or if one of them were to lose or gain a lot of enrollment for some reason or another, we would need to be able to change these numbers. Right? One of the schools we looked at is the newly founded Surratt Academy. At this point, they currently take roughly 60 students from us, all right? But we have seen a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, we have seen a couple handfuls of those students return to us in the first semester. So if that trend were to stay, it could be that more students return to us, and I want to make sure that if we reorganize, we are planning for those students. The students that currently attend Surratt Academy, the vast majority of them live in our Jefferson district. So that's the reason on the previous slide that you see we have set it up so that Lincoln's numbers are a little bit higher than Jefferson's, because we know at this point, if we get students added back into our district from at least Surratt Academy, they are most likely going to be going to Jefferson Elementary if they're in elementary school. And we want to make sure we have the space for them. Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of why those numbers are like that? Likewise, if you go to the next slide, is that if our enrollment is to go up, sorry, go back to the one with still, please, thank you. If our enrollment is to go up, we always have the ability to add a teacher. The board has done that multiple times through my entire time here for the last 12 years, where we have added a teacher either late spring or early summer because our enrollment numbers have gone up. And that is something that I do believe the board will see us asking again, either late spring or early summer, due to the immigration pieces and students showing up, because our numbers are going up around our immigration students, all right? So I do see that, and I don't want to say that these are the exact number of sections. What I'm saying is when we look at putting the class sizes roughly where we think they should be based on Big 9 averages and based on what this school board has deemed acceptable in the past, these are the reductions that we could make, or the efficiencies that we could make in class size, okay? But obviously, if we have increased class sizes or increased student numbers, we would be able to increase that by adding a teaching FTE. The next slide then is if we do not reorganize and we keep Roosevelt, Jefferson, and Lincoln all as, Roosevelt and Jefferson as pre-K through K sites and Lincoln as a K through 5 site, this is weak to balance our budget. So we looked at the reorganization with that idea in mind, and we're also looking at not reorganizing with that same idea in mind of hitting the budget number that we need to hit. So as you can see there, the numbers are, for the most part, higher across all 3 of the schools than they were through reorganization. And they are definitely more dramatic in how many students are in. For example, if you look at 4th grade, if you're a 4th grade student at Roosevelt, you're going to be at roughly 21 average per 2 classes. If you're at Jefferson, you're about 23. Those are similar. However, if you're at Lincoln, you're going to be upwards of 33. And the reason for that is if we were to add a 3rd section there, the numbers drop quite low, and it doesn't get us to the number that we need to be at for our budget reductions, okay? So it's showing you, if we don't reorganize and you look in the bottom right-hand corner, we can have 46 sections. So we can run 49 sections with reorganization. We can run 46 sections without. There was some discussion and some questions around where does the reorganization reductions or efficiencies come from. So as you can see, the total efficiencies or reductions that we can tie directly to reorganization is roughly $1.1 million. The first 2 that you see on there are due to our ALC, their supplies and utilities. That's the tune of $60,000 for those, and that would be shutting that building down, all right? Keeping the program running, but shutting the building down, all right? The next one would be we would be able to reduce an administrator, an elementary dean. We would be able to reduce an elementary clerical, right? A part-time custodian. We would be able to reduce 2 kindergarten paras. And those would come because we would be going from 12 sections of kindergarten to 10 sections of kindergarten, right, with class sizes staying the same or going down. We would be able to reduce an elementary social worker, 6.0 FTE in elementary teachers, and 1.5 elementary specialists. For a total of, like I said, 1.1 million. As you can see there in the red, so these are numbers that have come up before, and I know that not all board members are looking at the reorganization from a fiscal lens, but remember that, for us to maintain a 9.5% fund balance, we need to cut at least $1.9 million, and that's a board-adopted minimum fund balance. If we want to stay at the 11% that we are currently running at, we would need to cut $2.9 million. So that $1.1 million in efficiencies and reductions from the reorganization, you can then see in the red what would be left over that would be reductions that we would need to make elsewhere across the district. So if we were to reorganize and the board decided to go with a 1.9 million, we would still need to make an additional, we'll call it $800,000 in reductions. And if the board decided to go with the 11%, we would be looking at a $1.8 million additional on top of those efficiencies. The next slide is Mr. Daynert is going to discuss.
So this is just another way, sometimes I like to have things written out rather than in numbers and in charts. So this is just to summarize what Mr. Benty talked about on the other things. So some of the things we're looking at is you'll notice that without reorganization, we have 46 sections, and with reorganization, we have 49 sections. The reason that we're able to maintain more classroom teachers is because we're making those cuts in other areas. For example, the administration cuts, including administrative assistants and dean position, because we don't need them with two elementary buildings as opposed to 3 elementary buildings. As Mr. Benty mentioned, our divisors change when we have 2 elementary buildings and 3 elementary buildings. If you were to take that class at Lincoln and add another teacher, you'd end up with about 15 fourth graders in the classroom. Because we can't get the number of students in the divisors to work evenly to make a good, perfect class size of 24 fourth graders. We can do that if we pool all the fourth graders into 2 buildings rather than in 3 buildings. We're also saving money by utilizing 4 buildings instead of 5 buildings. By closing the ALC, we get some cost savings because of utilities and custodial services and different things like that. That's also a way we can save. And so for the most part, we're able to maintain those savings because we have 1 less building, the administration that goes with it, and then reallocate those savings back into class size reduction and general education teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Daynert. So one of the questions that the board asked was around transportation. So the transportation considerations are, we worked with the transportation company, or Faribault Transportation. They ran some scenarios. They looked at different possibilities. And what they believe at this point is that we would not need to add any additional routes. When I met with them, some of the pieces that I told them that were kind of non-negotiables were, I said I wanted to remain a 1-route district. So I didn't want students to be left at home. I didn't want younger students to be left at home while older students got picked up, and then a second route to come back and get them. I wanted to make sure that siblings rode the bus together. That was important. So that way, older elementary siblings, even if they weren't going to the same school as a kindergarten sibling, they would still be on the same bus with them, at least to get on the bus and get off the bus at home. So they don't believe that any additional routes would be needed. There are going to be shifts in who is eligible to ride the bus. That is going to change because people's home districts will change. So I want to make sure that is clear as well. And our 1 mile eligibility boundary will remain in effect. So the board adopted a few years ago that we were at 1 mile for all of our schools for busing. And understand that that is not, because I was confused, so that is not you don't just take a compass and draw a 1 mile radius around a school. That's not the way it works. There's a lot of pieces that you might live closer than a mile and you get a bus because there's a hazard deemed by the bus company that is, maybe there's not a sidewalk, or there's a busy road that you have to cross, or there's this or there's that. So there are qualifiers that allow people who live less than a mile to still qualify for busing due to safety concerns. Okay. And like I said, we will run 1 route so that siblings can ride the bus together. So they'll be picked up together at the bus pickup, and they'll be dropped off together at the bus drop-off. At this point, the busing garage is still working on, they don't want to put, I shouldn't say they don't want to. I've told them, don't put a massive amount of time into this until we know it's a go, because they're going to put many hours into this, figuring out, do we need a mini transfer site, maybe at Roosevelt? What does the transfer site look like staying at the middle school? All those pieces. I did tell them that I wanted the transfer site to continue to be at the middle school because we have the parking lot system for it and it's set up for that there. But they talked about having mini transfer sites, boundaries, all those other pieces that they would have to do a pretty deep dive into and run a lot of scenarios to figure out exactly what that would all look like. All right. And at this point, I've told them wait until we get either the thumbs up or the thumbs down. But they did tell me they did not expect any additional costs out of the busing if we were to reorganize. All right, so the next three slides are around building considerations. We're going to start with our current ALC building. So for those of you that have not been in our ALC building, our ALC program is thriving. We have incredibly dedicated ALC teachers and staff out there. But honestly, that building was never designed to be a school. Okay? That building is overdue for about $2.3 million in HVAC and other upgrades. And it has been overdue for at least the last 5 years. So if the board chooses not to reorganize, we will then still have to decide what we're going to do with that facility. Amazing program. The facility is really struggling out there to maintain the program, if I'm just being honest. We estimate that site is worth about $933,000. The tax value of the land is $145,000, and the building is about $788,000. If we're being absolutely honest, and that's who I am, so I will be, whoever is interested in buying that site is not interested in the building. They want the land, and they're going to be looking to demolish the building and build their own whatever they choose to put there. That site is currently 5.1 acres. It also needs significant security upgrades, possibly adding on to the current structure. So if you've been out there, the 2 doors that you can go through to get into the ALC are nowhere near where the offices are located. So it's really, unfortunately, at this point, an unsecure building. At worst, at best, it's very inconvenient that people have to walk all the way across the building to let you in if you need to, or buzz you in. All right? So for us to fix that, it would possibly be adding on either another entrance or adding on a vestibule of some sort for just the safety pieces. There is no kitchen on site, so it would need a kitchen to be comparable with the McKinley site. There's no gym on site, so it would need that to be comparable with the McKinley site, and it is not centrally located. The McKinley building considerations, it is due over the next 10 years for $2.3 million. So where we said the ALC is overdue, McKinley is due in the next 10 years for about the same amount of money in probably roughly the same types of upgrades, but over the next 10 years. The site is worth about 2.0 million, depending on how you look at that number. The tax value of the land is about $242,000, and the building is about $1.7 million. Right? It sits on 6.8 acres of land. Right? For us to turn it into a feasible ALC, it would need minimum an art and science room and new restrooms. That we're looking at to bid out for roughly $572,000. And that would be paid out of proceeds from the sale of the ALC property. It would also need a kitchen upgrade. There is a kitchen on site, but it needs an upgrade of roughly $120,000. And that money would come from our food service budget, which I know Mr. Gertis is regularly looking for how to spend money out of that restricted budget. So that would help us there. And McKinley already has secured entrances, and they've already been updated. Our last building that's impacted by this reorganization is Roosevelt. All right. Obviously, furniture and supplies would need to be moved. All right. Our classrooms on the second floor, which is where kindergarten would be housed, are smaller. Now, this was a change from the presentation that was sent out last week. So last week, I was looking at blueprints that were pre-construction of new kindergarten classrooms at Roosevelt, and I was looking at the wrong square footage for those classes. So classrooms on the second floor average 907 square feet compared to an average of 992 square feet for current first floor kindergarten classes. The one offset on this is if we were to reorganize, we would need 10 kindergarten sections, and there are 12 classrooms on the second floor. So we would have two spare classrooms, so roughly 1,800 square feet spare on the second floor that could be utilized. Exactly how that would look like or how they would set that up, I do not know, but we would have that available space. And we also have two kid-friendly playgrounds to accommodate younger children. So we have the regular elementary playground, and then we have our playground that was just added due to over by the early childhood addition. The next two slides are they go back and forth. It's kind of our way of throwing a pro and con list together, but we didn't want to call it that. We just wanted to refer to it as realities of reorganization, but you'll start to kind of notice a pattern here. So the first one is intentionality with our youngest learners. And Julie, did you want to talk about that?
So there's a lot of things that we can be very intentional about. Thank you, Olivia. A lot of things we can be really intentional about. And one of the things I really think about is we know with the READ Act, we're going to be adopting a new core ELA resource. Along with an adoption usually comes packages that we will look at purchasing of professional development. When you have to look at that, a lot of that is done with teachers in the classroom, with kids in the class. And so when you have to spread that across two buildings, the scheduling of that becomes more efficient. And sometimes we'll look at 1 year, sometimes we'll look at 2 years, just depends on the program and our budget for doing that. Another thought is around PLCs. This year we have a renewed invigoration with PLCs. And thinking about having a PLC or a professional learning community to work with the team of, right now we have some teams of 2 or 3. When you have 5 or 6 people to bounce ideas off of, look at your student data, learn with, there's that saying that more brains are better than one, and that's some situations that would help lend to.
So at this point, I'm just going to kind of walk through and give some comments about each of the other bullets here. We understand that change is hard. We also understand that this is not what we've done for the last 25, 30 years here in Faribault. We understand the emotional side of this as well. The other piece is that there is room to grow at Roosevelt for our early childhood program. This board just heard 2 weeks ago how our early childhood program is really knocking it out of the park and is working well towards achieving our goals that we set for our district around students being ready for kindergarten. This would allow room, physical space for that program to grow. Currently, we do not have the physical space for that program to grow. If the board decided tomorrow they wanted to add 2 more early childhood classrooms, we would really struggle to figure out where those were going to go. If we reorganize, we know that we have the space to grow that program. Kindergartners will not be in the same building as elementary siblings. Yes, that is absolutely true. The piece is that kindergartners will be in a pre-K and K site. They will not be able to have lunch or be on the playground with a 3rd or 4th or 5th grade sibling. We understand that's a concern for some families and for some of our staff as well. It will allow for a more focused elementary model, grades 1 through 5. Mr. Jerns, did you want to speak about this any?
Yes. So one of the things Mr. Benty talked about was a renewed emphasis in some of the PLC work we're doing. And my staff at Jefferson often tell me it would be really nice to be able to collaborate across the district with grade levels, with our grade level teammates. And right now in our current structure, when we're spread across Faribault at 3 different sites and the time constraints that we have, it's really challenging to get those grade level teams together for their own learning. And so with a reorganization, we would put grades 1 through 5 about half a mile apart from one another, and that would reduce that barrier, and it would allow for more opportunities for our grade level teams to collaborate.
Thank you. We also understand that there's a shift of neighborhood schools from 3 to 2. I debated on even putting the term neighborhood schools in here because that is something that honestly is difficult to say still exists in Faribault. And I know that's something that is difficult for some people because you're still a Lincoln Lion or a Roosevelt Rocket or a McKinley Eagle. But the piece around this is that, I think it was roughly 30 years ago, the district looked at closing 3 elementary sites, McKinley, Garfield, as well as Washington, and opening a few years later, Roosevelt Elementary. So this is not something that the district hasn't done before. It's just something that we haven't done in recent history for most people. It's a better use of our physical space and resources. Collaboration between early childhood and kindergarten and grades 1 through 5. That's very much what Ms. Huell and Mr. Juren spoke about. It's a better location and educational environment for our 9-12 ALC students and staff, much more centrally located for them. Roosevelt Elementary students will need to switch schools. This is something that is, if you ask me what's one of the biggest drawbacks, this is probably, I'm going to say number 1 or number 2 on my list. And that is that if the board decides to reorganize and you are a, say, 3rd grade student at Roosevelt Elementary, you will not be a 4th grade student at Roosevelt Elementary. You'll be a 4th grade student at either Lincoln or Jefferson. So for those students that are in grades 1 through currently 4 at Roosevelt, you would be going to a different school. And I know that's tough. It's fiscally responsible in our staffing, so the reductions, as you saw from that chart, come across the board from administration, teachers, paras, clerical, and custodial. Many staff will need to switch schools. This is true. I've been asked many times how we will decide who goes where. We will work with FEA, our local education union. We will follow the contract. I will rely heavily on HR and Ms. Yoakum's expertise on this. But it is something that, yes, a lot of our staff will have to change schools. I understand that. It's fiscally responsible in our footprint in the community. We're going to be downsizing by 1 site. The nostalgia part, I've had conversations with people that said, well, my child is in the same classroom that his dad and potentially even his grandfather went to school in, or at least in the same school, sometimes in the same classroom. I understand that part, and there's nothing that I can say that will take that away. I don't even dare try to argue that one because I'm a nostalgic person, and I know that if I were sitting here as superintendent of this district that I grew up in, I would struggle with the nostalgia part as well, especially if they were looking to tear down the elementary school that I went to or get rid of it or change it. So I understand that, and I do not have anything that I can say against that part of it. And the last piece here is that it's fiscally responsible in our investment into our facilities. I think I would have a real hard time saying, yes, we are being fiscally responsible, putting $2.3 million in deferred maintenance into a site that's only worth $900,000. I wouldn't do that if it was my house. And I don't know if anyone else would either. So that's why I'm saying that if the board chooses not to go this route, we will still then have to, I think, have a hard discussion around what do we do with our ALC program and what sites are available for it. At this time, Mr. Chair, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Benty and staff for the presentation. So at this time, as I looked around, and the yellow Post-it notes seem to be a highlight because many of us have written many of these. So to be fair here, what I'd like is, as I go around, or whoever would like to start questions or comments, maybe you have one or two questions and we'll move on to someone else, just to be fair. So if you just indicate to me if you'd like to start, and we'll go from there, because some of the questions might be the same, and we can go from there. If that's okay with everyone, I will do that. So, Mr. Wolf, I'm going to start with you.
Mr. Bellingham, I'll defer to somebody else because I'm almost halfway through my Post-it notes. So maybe other people will answer questions, and then I won't feel like I'm taking all the time. So I'll come back to me, and hopefully others have the same questions.
Richard, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mr. Olson.
One thing I do not see here, and to me it's important, because basically you're doing this to save money, balance your budget, right? That's your ultimate goal?
No, because the reorganization does not balance our budget. So it helps in a way, but it absolutely does not balance our budget.
Okay, one thing that I thought I requested was with the ESSER funds running out. I've talked to you in front of the board and with you, the savings from individuals that were hired under the ESSER funds, and they're going to run out end of this year, I believe, right, Scott?
That is correct.
Yeah, and those individuals were supposed to be terminated because ESSER funds ran out. Now, what kind of savings with that if we hold to that, I called that was promised to the board at that time from the previous superintendent? And for some reason, this was not thought of in this presentation.
So that was not put in this presentation because this is a reorganization presentation. That is a budget concern that falls outside of reorganization. So we'll be looking to bring those budget pieces February 5th to the work session for the board to see for the first time.
I guess I don't agree with you because I wanted to figure how much that would save, and do we have to go through this reorganization or a limited reorganization? That if I don't know that figure, if it's 10,000 or 10 million, I don't know that figure. I wish I could get that figure that then we can apply it toward the reorganization of, oh, we have a savings over here of X number of dollars.
So I don't know the exact ESSER dollar amount that we are spending in this school year. What I do know is that we're at $2.9 million in deficit spending if we don't reduce anything for next school year. So, like I said, those are pieces that we've been working on for February 5th, that we wanted to talk reorganization, get that decision, and then decide on budget pieces based off of the reorganization decision.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Wolf.
Can I just, and I don't want to go way off topic here because this is about reorganization, but I just want to state publicly, Mr. Olson, you and I obviously have a very different memory of what was promised by who and when with regards to ESSER funds. I have no idea how we would possibly, every person we hired with ESSER funds or banded together through braided funding or whatever you want to call it with grants and other programs, how we would let every person go when our needs change over 3 years, when people that we've hired have maybe retired and or taken a job in another district. So I simply want to push back on that and state, I don't remember that, I don't recall that, and I don't know how you would logically do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Moore.
It kind of goes along with Mr. Olson here on this chart right here. Okay, you've got the full-time equivalent versus the ADM. With the full-time equivalent, do you know the breakdown of the people like teachers and staff that are actually in the classroom versus other people? I would say administration. Do you have that breakdown or not?
The breakdown for how many FTE they are?
Yes, I'd like to know that.
So I believe that is part of the report that
It's coming?
Mr. Gertis gives in the fall, where they talk about this is the percentage of our fund that goes to administration. This is the percentage of our fund that goes to personnel.
It's in our audit.
Yeah, it's part of our audit. So, I mean, if you're looking for exact numbers of how many FTE are administrators, how many FTE are teachers, we can probably pull that together.
Okay.
But I guess I'm confused on how that
Well,
has to go with reorganization.
well, it probably doesn't, but I do agree with that when we do hire people, like for the ESSER, and at the same, but then when that runs out, it stays on our budget and we have to pay these salaries. And that I am concerned about that, as Mr. Olson is, so we can move on. Thank you.
So I am a bit conflicted. I agree with Mr. Wolf. I don't understand why we would cut something if it's working. But I also agree with other commentary. I guess I was under the impression that this reorganization, I was told to make a decision based on numbers. So are we making decisions based on numbers only, or, I mean, this is the only plan that we've seen. So how can we make a big overall adjustment of just about $3 million when we're hearing today, and the only thing that we've heard today is reorganization? So is there a way that we can preview the information, like compare them apples to apples?
Are you talking about previewing the budget reduction plans based on reorganization versus based on not reorganizing?
Well, I think I want to see more than one option. I know that we have to cut just about $3 million, and this is the only option that we've been presented.
So you want to see more than one reorganization option?
I want to see, if you want me to make a decision on how I'm supposed to cut $3 million, I want to see the option and put reorganization in there,
Okay.
or find a different line item to find $1.8 million. But this is the only option. Like, I expected a list of, we could do this or this, or this and this, not just reorganization.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Benty, maybe I can clarify that. So if we go back to, I just want to summarize here quickly, from April, when the board directed Mr. Benty and staff to look at our facilities, correct, and make sure we're using them properly, and what possibilities would be out there to reorganize or whatever, that was the directive. As he came back in November and presented, in November here, there were three options: do nothing, reorganize, or not reorganize.
No, it was there were two different reorganization options.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, thank you. So it was do nothing, which is, and I'm going on, I believe, I want to go to slide 9 here after a while as well, I think. But, so, to do nothing, to reorganize by having the elementary schools be 1-4, and having Roosevelt as, am I correct, the Roosevelt pre-K, K?
Yeah, it would, the
Pre-K
other
4.
option was Roosevelt pre-KK, Lincoln and Jefferson as 1-4 sites, and move 5th grade to the middle school.
Right. And that, at a board meeting or a work session, the board said, no, that's off the table. So we were left with two options: do nothing or the reorganization plan.
But will we ever do nothing?
So in my mind here, then, I think what's being presented tonight on the piece of reorganization, because budget is coming February 5th. Budget proposals and how we're going to get there is February 5th. So in my mind, if we look at the reorganization reductions efficiency on slide 9, this is telling what's going to be reduced or whatever. I don't think, Ms. Steves, that we have any options, or it wasn't looked in, or do we have time? Did it have time to look here? And if we do this, and we can do this, or whatever, the research and things were done since April, but that's just from my lens and how I see it. I might be confused. So, anyway, Ms. Boudreau, did you have something
Yes,
you'd like to?
I have a question for Superintendent Bendy. If we could look at the slide that was just put up, it's reorganization, reductions, efficiencies. It was just came up. I don't have a page number, but.
Slide number 9.
Okay, slide number 9. If you could further explain those yellow highlighted numbers and how they interplay. There's 2 columns of numbers,
Yes.
and so if you could better explain that, I think it might be helpful.
Yes. So you have to go up to the top of that column where it says 1.9 million and 2.9 million. So for the board has adopted a 9.5% fund balance, saying that we cannot go below 9.5%, right? If the board holds with that and says they want to go to 9.5% for next year on our fund balance, we need to cut $1.9 million to be there. Currently, the district is running right around 11% fund balance, which is a nice place to be for us because it allows us to hire a teacher or make some financial changes during the school year and not be below the 9.5. If the board decides to go to 11% fund balance, we need to cut $2.9 million. So as you work through those reductions or those savings, the numbers are the same in both columns all the way down, right? The total is the same for both, but the difference is obviously different based off of whether it's going from a $1.9 million budget deficit or a $2.9 million budget deficit. So once again, I reiterate, reorganization, if the board chooses to do it from a financial lens, is only about a third, a little more than a third of the piece of the pie for the budget piece. It doesn't get us all the way out of the budget deficit.
Mr. Chair.
Then you have follow-up, go ahead.
So with, just to follow up, yes, with the explanation of that, if this reorganization, if the efforts that your staff, the administrative cabinet has put into this and you fail, then we still would have the 1.9 if we reduced our fund balance that we'd have to cut. So even with this proposal, depending on what our fund balance is, we still have to cut a tremendous amount of money. And that will be our discussion in February as to which positions we cut, because that's ultimately what we have to do.
Yes.
So to say that this is not effective, I mean, here we have efficiencies, you've laid them all out. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for me, but I realize saying that there's pain for people. And first of all, I want to thank all those who have communicated with us your concerns, your passions, your worries, your anxieties. There are going to be those, and that's not something we enjoy doing to people, but when we have to cut this amount of money, I mean, I think this is one of the more easier ways to do it is to utilize our building efficiencies, utilize our capital investments, and look at class size that may be more manageable. I just have written down, what I feel is really important points. Is the fact that we don't have to change a lot of transportation, class sizes. Our demographics show we have less people that are going to be, less students that will be coming to us. And the fact that our staffing and enrollment don't seem to correlate. They're not parallel. and we need to look at that, and that's what we'll be looking at in February. I think all of those just play into a responsible decision that a board has to make, and it's a difficult decision. But I feel that this is well placed. I think take this to the public, take this down to the coffee shop, to the senior center, and explain it to them, that you have efficiencies, you're eliminating one school, you're trying to fill the other schools to a better capacity that's not being used. I think most people would just common sense say yes. And I don't say that lightly because I know there's pain. I know there's pain out there for a lot of folks. But I just say for me, it's an easy decision because I have not any other options.
Thank you, Ms. Woodruff.
I just
Dr.
wanted to
Robichaud.
say that.
Just a couple of comments. I looked at that page 2, so you say 6 FTEs will be reduced in this reorganization, but it's not the reorganization where 6 FTEs are going to be reduced, it's district-wide. When in fact, you're really adding 3 sections in the elementary. You're going from 46 to 49 sections.
If we reorganize the efficiencies that we save through the administrative, the clerical, the
No,
custodial.
I'm talking teachers.
Yep, it allows us to it allows us to have smaller class sizes and have more sections.
So I did not see that on there, that the savings from administration would in fact allow you to have 3 more sections of elementary.
That's the
Is
way,
that right?
yes, that is correct.
Okay. The other thing is, I am very confused because I thought the reorganization really came because it was educationally sound, that the student achievement was our driving factor, not the dollars and cents. I understand, Mr. Gertis, excuse me, you can cover your ears while I talk about this, but I think that if we're going to reorganize for any reason, it has to be because it's better for students, not because we're going to save a number of dollars. We have to go through budget cuts, absolutely no doubt about it. But if we take a look at this and we're going to reorganize because it's going to save us dollars, what does that mean for our students? What does that mean for our families? What does that mean for the collaboration that's going to go? You talk about convenience because now you only have to have 2 buildings where you do PLCs or work collaboratively across. That's fine, but what does it mean for our students? And through this whole presentation and through the slides, I've not seen anything yet that says this is better for students. This is better educationally, that we in fact are going to see increases in our student achievement. Our test scores are going to skyrocket or go larger. Now, I know that's a guess anytime you do anything. And also the fact that if we're going to talk about reorganization, to me, this is just one piece of the puzzle. And by the way, I'd be the first one to stand on the table and talk about doing things differently than we are today. Because what we've done today has not resulted in any positive increase. That's just one piece. What about the 1 through 5? What about the middle school? What about the high school? What are those other pieces of the puzzle that are going to be impacted by our reorganization structure? I talked to you one time about going K3 because reading by 3rd grade is what we're trying to achieve. And you told me there wasn't capacity to do that. Now I look at here and we have 600 capacity and we're going to have 400 at Roosevelt. So I'm really concerned about why are we really even talking about reorganization if it's not under the auspices of it's going to be better for students and we're going to have a more comprehensive educational system in Faribault, rather than talking about saving dollars. I'm really disappointed by that conversation, that we should be talking more about what does it mean for our students? What does it mean for our parents? What does it mean for our collaboration across the district? So,
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Wolf, do you want to go ahead with anything or you want to?
No, I'll this is good.
Okay.
I'll just keep listening.
Okay, I just want to make sure everyone's going to, Ms. Moore.
Okay, I'll try to get everything in a little bit here. Mr. Robichaud, I agree with you, totally. Yes, I know. Thank you. Really. The bottom line is, what is this going to do for our students' achievement? So I won't repeat everything you said. But I do have concerns. I've been talking to people. I've been with parents and with the staff and the teachers. And one of the things, I would like to get this in, and a parent said, and I'm going to quote a little bit, it says, we need to do this, we need to think we have to be very thoughtful and intentional as far as our, and I read that as far as what's happening to our students, how is this going to affect achievement? And I'm just, in fact, one email I got, there was 39 concerns. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the weeds here. And I'm just going to read these. I wrote these down. What is the effect going to be on our younger students? The little ones, they're not going to be in the same building as their brothers and sisters. That bothers me. What is the effect on the EBD students? That is really a big one. And parents' time are going to be split between 2 or 3 schools. We have a problem with parent involvement now. And what's going to happen if they have 2 or 3 schools? What about the safety concerns at Roosevelt? Got the little ones. I went in that building, and there are some blind spots there, and they've got the railing over it's the bridge. I can see the little ones climbing over that and possibly falling, so there's a safety issue there. Got concerns about the Spanish immersion. How is this going to affect that program? And I know I talked to Mr. Benty about the transportation costs. There's not going to be any, but are we sure there's not going to be extra ones? I don't know. I think right now we need to take a little bit more time to look at this. And these concerns need to be addressed. One of the things, too, I want to mention that I didn't know that Northfield, I guess, had a kindergarten center, and they abandoned it. Why? I'd like to know that. There's so many unanswered questions here, and I think these need to be addressed. I think I've just touched on a few of them here, and, what is it going to do with our students, but also with staff? And as this one parent said, we need to build community not only with students, but their families and teachers. People need to feel vested in our schools. And how do they feel vested? I think by listening and acting on what their concerns are and their suggestions. I guess one more thing. When I look at this chart, I don't know what page it is. But is this all or nothing? For instance, if we decide to reject this, one of the things is we do know that the ALC does need a new building. And so if we reject this, does that mean they don't get their new building to McKinley? Do we have to do this in one big chunk? Can we do it in, for instance, if we don't, if we say no to this part, does that mean the ALC won't be moving to McKinley then? And I think they need to. And I think that's an important issue. So I'm concerned that it's all or nothing. I think, as you said, we need to think about these things. And I agree with Mr. Robichaud on that. And that's it. Thank you.
So as we continue our questions and our discussion here, I think I'm going to pull back to center here and focus a little bit here on in April, when we asked for Mr. Benty and staff to go through this plan, we asked for the why. Why do we need to do this? Why make our buildings as efficient and things like this? And a lot of the questions we're now getting and they developed this plan, what they thought would be best. And now we're getting these questions of the hows. How's this going to happen? And rightfully so, because people want to know the details. I too am a proponent of how will this benefit student achievement? So is a student moving a building, is their test score going to go down just because we move a building? I disagree with that. But there are many other factors, as we know, in learning to pull that pieces of that puzzle together. So as our question happens here, I'd like to focus on the presentation and the why piece of it more so, and there are a lot of details that need to be worked out in any sort of move or structure, et cetera, even though they are important. So that's there. I'm just going to jump in with a question here.
Mr. Chair, can I just add on to that for a
Certainly.
second? It's not that we don't have answers to the how questions at this point. We do, all right? Not to all of them. The issue is that if I give you all of the answers to the how right now, and the board votes yes on it, and then 2 months from now or 4 months from now, all of a sudden a different way for us to do it, which makes more sense at that time, pops up, we're going to obviously go that direction, and it might not be the exact same thing that we said here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that would be a case in point of me not being honest or not being transparent with the community, because our how changed. And that's very real. That happens all the time, that how you're doing something changes as you get further into it. So I could give a lot of the how answers tonight with the understanding that a lot of them are potentially going to change by the time next school year were to roll around.
And lastly, I believe I need to say this, but it's one of the advantages I have of being a former teacher here for many years, and I was involved in a move. I was involved in sixth grade going to middle school, and that transition. And that transition was very fluid, planned out, et cetera, much like we have now. And I can guarantee anyone that's listening, watching, reads this or whatever, that this school district takes care of our kids. Our administrators, our teachers, our paras, our custodians, our bus drivers. If I missed anyone, I'm sorry. We take care of kids. So if there are IEP concerns coming from a fourth grader that's going to go from Roosevelt to Jefferson, those people meet in the spring. I know in my experience, those fifth grade teachers met with us in the spring. They met with the counselors. We went over the 504, the IEPs, regardless if they were for LD, EBD, autism, whatever we had, everything was encompassed. We made sure we contacted the parents before school started. Everything was in place to make them feel welcome and things. And that's a big transition from fifth grade to sixth grade. And it happens very fluid from fifth grade to sixth grade, going from elementary to middle school now, or at least it was in my experience, and I've been out 10 years, so there we go. But again, we take care of kids. We're not going to abandon anyone. Nobody's going to feel bad, but there is, as Mr. Benty said, there is the nostalgia piece as well. So I just think we have to eliminate some of that. There's always the fear factor. Change is hard, change is difficult. It's going to be difficult for teachers. I went through it. Okay? It's difficult for administrators. It's difficult for parents. It's difficult for kids. But in the big picture, what are we doing here? Is it best for kids? Is it best for the district? And that's what I focus on here. So, anything yet, Mr. Wolf? You're still good?
Other
Anyone
people
else?
have questions? Otherwise, I'll go through
Anyone else
the
have-
whole slide deck page by page here.
I guess, both you, Mr. Bellingham and Mr. Benty, of course, you're absolutely right. Change is hard. Mr. Benty, you told me when I expressed my concerns and my thoughts as both a parent and a board member regarding nostalgia, that you'll never change my mind, and you're absolutely right. Just to be really clear and honest, this is one of the benefits, the pros, if you will, of me sending my children to Faribault Public Schools. And so it has, I understand, it has little to no educational value. My kids were the kids that Mr. Benty was talking about. My kindergarten, both of my kids went to the same kindergarten classroom that their father did. And while it's not important educationally, I put a lot of value onto that. And I'm here because I have kids in the district. If I didn't send my kids to Faribault Public Schools, I wouldn't be at this table. So it's frustrating, it's disheartening. I hope that, you know, of course, change is hard, I understand that, but I'm really fearful that many families are like mine and might leave the district if that significance and that value is just dismissed, just like this.
Questions on Mr. Wolf?
All right, I get to go. Okay, thank you. Mr. Benty, page 2 with the squiggly line graphs.
Yes.
You mentioned how they should pretty much be intersecting or very close. Would you say, is it realistic as our students' needs change that this gap might as well? And my point is, whether it's new to country, whether it's mental health services, whether it's special services, et cetera, right? I struggle with that. Today's day and age and our students and the needs compared to 10 years ago are likely different to a degree. Would that be fair to say?
That is fair to say, yes.
So I don't disagree with that line, that the gap should probably be closed, but to think that they should be status quo as 10 years ago, I struggle with that. Is that fair? Or tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. There, in a situation and in a district where we have, with the needs that we have, there should be a gap between there. But it's difficult to look at a gap that's as large as what ours is.
Fair enough, thank you. Page 7, I skipped a few, page 7. Elementary class sizes with reorganization. I think NASCO will maybe bring it up. NASCO, can you bring up page 7, please? Yeah, that one. Elementary class sizes with reorganization. So walk me through again, Jefferson being at specifically grade 1, grade 2, and grade 5, where they're at 26, 27, and 31, sizable amounts more than what would be proposed at Lincoln. But you mentioned there's some room there if maybe kids came back from a different STEM school or something like that. But that looks like that proposal is a fair amount higher. What am I missing there? So like if I look at grade 5, right? 31 times 3 is 93, 4 times 24 is 96, right? So
Yep.
why not a fourth one? There's 3 kids difference there, right? In between. So why would there be only a third section and not a fourth section?
So we could look at that. If we looked at that, then what would happen is we would look at it and say, okay, 93 divided by 4, now you're looking at what, 22, 23, and you're going to run a kindergarten section at 26 average. So it's where do we want to strategically put our staff to meet the needs of our students? Historically, and looking at across the Big Nine, and I know some people value that information and some don't, but looking at it, you try to step up to larger class sizes as the grades get larger, not step down, and not have a giant jump from kindergarten or from first grade into second grade, larger class sizes. So we try to step them up.
Right. So let's look at grade 1, if you will. Lincoln, 5 sections at 20. Easy number, 100, right? Jefferson, 4 sections at 26. I think that's over 100. Why would you not have 5 there at roughly the same amount of 20 for grade 1? What am I missing there?
So remember, these numbers are going to change a little bit because these numbers do not account for the 50 students difference that's on the previous slide. So if you go to the previous slide.
Yep.
We're talking about having 500 at Lincoln and 450 at Jefferson.
Yep.
Right. The next 2 slides do not, or I should say the next slide, the one that you were asking about, does not account for those numbers. It accounts for 450 and 450.
Okay. I got you. Okay.
All right.
Yep, I'm following you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, next slide. Sorry. Page 8, elementary class sizes without reorganization. So Roosevelt, projected, I think, right? Projected, these would be projected class sizes for next year?
So what we did here was we took the current class sizes in each building and we rolled them up 1 year.
Okay.
Then we estimated 201 incoming kindergartners and split them across all 3 buildings evenly, which we know is not the case.
Okay.
But just for this purpose, we did it that way.
Thank you. So Roosevelt, projection for next year would be 32 students in grade 5.
That is correct.
Lincoln would have 31 students in grade 3, in each section in grade 3, 33 in grade 4, 34 in grades 5. Those are some pretty significant, at least historically, for our elementary school classes, those are pretty large.
Yes.
And those would assume that we cut the budget by, or balance the budget with 2.9 million in cuts to get to those levels of class sizes, or?
Yes, so
Okay.
that is part of a larger plan that would get us to the $2.9 million reduction. So looking at it, that's where those classes would end up with our reductions.
So, to Mr. Robichaud and Ms. Moore's point about student achievement, I fully agree with them. Typically, I think, and I might be dead wrong, the data might provide different, but I'd also question the data because every class is slightly different, right, based on students in each classroom. But I got to believe if we've got 31 kids and 33 kids and 34 kids in those 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, I can't believe that possibly can help our student achievement. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would think that would run counter to our student achievement. Next page, if you will, page 9, which is reorganization, reductions, and efficiencies. You go through those and question, right, if we go from 3 elementary buildings to, I guess what I'd call 2 elementary buildings, right? And Roosevelt becomes the pre-K through K. Today, sorry, principals. Today, we have 3 principals at 3 elementary schools. Would we continue with 3 principals, or we've got 2 elementary buildings? Do we go to 2 elementary principals? I don't see an elementary principal on here. I see 1 elementary dean of students on here.
Yeah, so license-wise, and this is where it gets a little interesting. License-wise, if you have a pre-K and K center, if you're mixing pre-K and K, which is done quite often, if you have an early childhood license, you are not, like early childhood administration license, you're not licensed to do kindergarten. I, as our principals do, have a K-12 principal's license. I cannot do early childhood. So in that building, we would need to have both licensed people. Now, we would look at the efficiencies of a part-time principal to cover kindergarten and then use that person someplace else to cover other duties that we would need, because finding a part-time principal is not really an option either. So we would split that person's duties is the plan.
Okay, in potentially splitting those duties, are those other duties accounted for in here, or that's to be determined and will come?
Those other duties would be to be determined, correct?
Okay, wonderful, thank you. I appreciate that. If we don't do this, I think following up on Ms. Steves a little bit, if we don't do this, where do we get the other 1.1 million from in cuts? I think, Mr. Gertis, we still use roughly 75,000 per FTE when we talk about reductions or adds.
85.
Oh, 85.
Yep.
All right, sorry, just give me a second. I promise I'm not texting anyone.
It used to be 75. We changed it to 85.
Okay. Just give me a second. So 12.997, so I'm going to round up to 13. So if we don't do this, and because of these efficiencies, if you will, we still have to find the 1.1 million elsewhere, which is going to lead to 13 FTEs throughout the district cut, correct?
Correct.
And so,
I mean, yes and no. 13 if you're calculating 85,000.
yeah, that's what
All
I'm
right.
calculating. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I mean, roundabout, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, just being on the school board for maybe too long, really what happens when you make reductions are class sizes go up and/or programming goes away,
Correct.
right? I don't know what else.
Services, programming and services.
Services, right? So yes, sorry to leave out services, but I kind of include those together. So if we have to find another 1.1 million cut, additional 13, back to student achievement, I have to believe we struggle more with student achievement by increased class sizes and/or services being reduced and/or programming being reduced. So if we don't do this, back to my original question here, where does the other 1.1 million come from? I think we'll see that on February 5th, according to the prior conversation. Is that fair to say?
Yes, so we are in the process of putting together 2 budget proposals. One, if the board decides to reorganize, one, if the board decides not to reorganize. We have overshot the 2.9 million on both, so that there's a little bit of flexibility there. I'm just foreshadowing, and I apologize here, I'm going to go on a bit of a bird walk, Mr. Chair, but I'm going to really push the board to hit the $2.9 million mark, because it sets us up financially in a much better position in future years than if we go below that number. But we will have both proposals, and honestly, or just the way that it works is both of those proposals will need to be on the work session agenda. And we'll literally walk in with both proposals. The board will vote at the special session, and then we will basically go with the one that we need to go with for the work session side of it, if that makes sense.
Page 11, transportation considerations. You stated at this time no additional routes are expected to be needed, but does that mean that no additional costs?
That means no additional costs, yes. The costs come off of the routing.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm getting closer.
You took 4 of my questions.
Page 12, Faribault Area Learning Center building considerations. I think Ms. Moore mentioned, at this point, we have no plan B for a new ALC or and I say new, and I don't mean brand spanking new from the ground up. What I mean is no other alternative for the ALC other than to McKinley at this time, or leave it there. And I think most people don't want to leave it there based on the costs of.
Yeah, and I have looked at other options around town for the ALC, and none of them were going to suit the purposes that were needed, either because they were too small or they just didn't have the amenities that either they currently have or would have at McKinley.
Thank you. If we do this and we move the ALC to McKinley, is there enough space for a middle school ALC option there?
Yes, so the size of the McKinley building is considerably larger than the current ALC building. So there would be the option, if the ALC deemed necessary, to start a middle school program there.
Then there's probably additional staffing that would go with that.
That would require additional staffing, yes. There would be the space, but obviously there would be an additional cost with staffing.
Thank you.
And that would be a board, most likely a board decision to approve that, because you'd be approving the staffing piece of it.
Okay, thank you. Page 13, NASCO, if you would. Top bullet point, due over the next 10 years, $2.3 million in HVAC and other capital upgrades at McKinley. Mr. Benty, Mr. Gertis, is that scheduled to come out of long-term funding?
Well, LTFM, right?
LTFM, sorry.
So the bonds that we approved earlier
Okay.
are going to cover a majority of the HVAC needs for 25.
Okay,
That's already scheduled, which is a large chunk of that $2.3 million.
thank you. And then down to the fourth bullet point, art and science rooms and new restrooms, $572,000 paid from proceeds of the sale. What would happen if we don't sell the property for that much? Let's just say we only get $400,000 for that property. Mm-hmm. That extra $172,000, that would have to come from the general fund or somewhere else, any of that deficiency gap. I mean, I hope we sell it for $1,572,000,
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but if we don't, right, where would that deficiency come from?
Probably either
Okay,
We don't have a lot of operating capital dollars put into it, but we could scrounge up a little bit.
okay, thank you.
We're
And-
hoping for the same thing.
Yeah, no, right. And Mr. Benty, to your point of having a bit healthier fund balance would allow you to be flexible.
Correct.
Last but not least, Mr. Chair, I'm close. If you were to wait here, if the board says, no, we need to wait here, we need to explore other options, are there other options you feel that you haven't explored? I mean, you've had this since April. We're looking at building optimization and also student achievement, right? But are there other options that, are just, we haven't had enough time? Or are there anything there where if we kick this can down the road and it costs us $1.1 million to kick the can down the road?
So there were, and maybe I should have been more clear about this maybe back in November, that there were quite a few different options that we looked at. And they were thrown out for different reasons. Some of the pieces that, I mean, if I had a crystal ball, and I said this when I had 6 separate community meetings around this, I said, if I just had a magic wand, I would honestly build a pre-K through 8 site. That's the best. If you want the research and you want the best site, that's it. Pre-K through 8 all under one roof. No transitions, everyone's there together, and then they go off to high school together. That's the best research model, that's everything. We do not have the physical space in any of our buildings to do that, okay? So the other option then was to look at, well, and I know Mr. Sesker, who sat here before, had talked about grade banding, where we might go K2, 3, 4, 5, 6, things like that. That creates a lot of transitions from building to building, which research then says is not what's best for students. So there were, while we started off with a lot of different options, many of them were whittled down very quickly because either our physical limitations on our space didn't allow for it, or I knew from previous dealings with the board, having a student be in 5 different schools by the time they got to high school, all under the Faribault Public Schools banner, was not going to be what this board was interested in. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. Are there other options that are out there? They are, but they really kind of fall in one of those 2 categories.
Okay, thank you. Just a few more questions. And this might be Mr. Gertis as well. Any idea of the one-time cost that if we approve this, what would that look like in terms of one-time cost? Do we have a ballpark range of that?
Are you talking about one-time costs for the movement of stuff?
The move, to get whatever up to code. I mean, obviously, we saw that for the ALC, right? But anything else that might be one time? So we have a rough guesstimate of all that stuff.
I don't believe there's any code pieces.
There would be any code, there would be time and effort to move people around.
Yeah.
Teachers' time for their contract to
Yeah.
transition classrooms from point A to point B.
And I get it. I mean, I understand one-time cost versus ongoing annual. I fully get that. I just didn't know if we think that's 20,000 or 220,000 or,
More than 20,000 and less than 200,000.
Okay. Good enough range. Thank you. I'm glad I threw it out there for you. Can I ask Mr. Daynard a question?
Sure.
Is that fair? Mr. Daynard, would you see any reason that our special services would fall in terms of care we provide to those students that need those services through this?
No, not in terms of care. So as you'll remember, the last 2 years, we've had a great influx of special ed students, and we've prepared for the capacity of the number of students. We're not necessarily required to educate a student in a Setting 3 program in their home building. We're required to provide that service by district, not necessarily by building. And so I think with the staffing in the classrooms that I have right now, I would be able to divide them. So for example, I have 6 DCD classrooms, and I would still need 6 DCD classrooms. They just may be separated differently. Right now, they're 2 at each building. I think that 2 at each building will meet the capacity that we anticipate. The one area where may have to rearrange some staffing is our Setting 3 EBD, because right now I have two Setting 3 EBD programs at Lincoln Elementary. I may decide to move one of those to the kindergarten level and then keep one at Lincoln. But it's really going to be based on the number of students and where the students are at.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Mr. Chair, I'm close. Mr. Benty, if we do this, how do we roll out the green carpet for all students, families, and staff that are disrupted by this? Notice I said green, everyone. Green. Keyword green. How do we assure, right? I mean, I get it. Somebody could be mad that it's raining the day that they transfer or something. I mean, I get that. But in reality, how do we make sure that we do the very, very best we can for anybody that's, going through this move?
And that's why what I talked about in the presentation, where I talked about, students at Roosevelt that are currently in elementary school, that is one of the toughest pieces, is that if the board decides to go with reorganization, they're going to be going to a different school. I think what we have to have, it's not an option, is we have to have a concerted effort from our principals through our social workers and all of our classroom teachers that there is a welcome to this building. There are, dates for those students to be able to enter the building and walk around the building along with their parents before school begins. There's open houses, there's, pieces like that, as well as for them to be able to meet their teachers, see their classrooms, all of those pieces, and on top of, just kind of the first few days being a celebration of getting back to school. One of the pieces, and this is not meant to downplay any of this, so I do not mean it to sound like that, is we also have to understand that kids are a lot tougher and a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. Not saying it's not going to be difficult on some or all of them, but I am a firm believer in their amount of grit and determination, and give them credit for that. So, but there are definitely going to be concerted efforts that we need to do on our end to make sure that they are feeling welcomed, not only the students, but the parents, into that new building.
Okay, thank you. Once again, thank you to everybody that has reached out. We appreciate it. And just piggybacking on Ms. Boudreaux's comments, change is hard, whether it's this change or not. If we do 2.9 million in cuts, rest assured this district's changing, no matter what. 2.9 million in cuts is a big, big number across this district. And so it's painful. It's terribly painful. It's terribly painful to have to make those decisions. There's no easy decisions. We realize we deal with livelihoods. We realize we deal with families. That's tough. But we have to balance our budget as we have a responsibility to everybody, whether we do this or whether we don't do this. Change is happening. And so I can assure you it's not an easy decision for anybody up here, and we appreciate your thoughts and concerns and honesty and patience with us. So, Mr. Chair, I'm done. I'm out of questions. I'm out of speech.
Well done,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreau.
I have a question. So if this proposal does not pass tonight, we're looking at the can't even read it, 2.9 in reductions. How many FTEs would that be the equivalent of then? Can someone answer that? I mean, if we're using the 85,000 average, is that 34? Am I off? Does anybody know?
34.
Okay.
2.9 divided by 85,000.
So come February 6th, we're going to need to cut 34.
I do want to cautious a couple things. One, we're not voting tonight, so you gave
Okay.
Dr. Moore a mild
I
cardiac
understand.
infraction over here.
I just wanted
Okay.
to
I got it.
There's an AED right out there. I was going to get it.
Secondly, is that technically, yes, but it's not all going to be teacher reduction. So you don't divide it by 85. There's a lot of other pieces that we're working on. So I am not comfortable with that 34 number at all, because it would not be 34 teaching FTE. It would be spread out over a much larger group. But it still is $2.9 million.
But excuse me, Mr. Chairman, it could likely be more if we're using para salaries or, I just need to know kind of an estimate of what kind of FTEs we would be looking at if we did not pass this proposal, this initiative, because I think we all need to look at that and how we're going to feel when we have to do that.
So, Mr. Benty, if I may, so that, just to clarify, maybe I should do this as we begin. One, as Mr. Benty said, we are not voting on this tonight.
Okay.
It's not an action item. It was a report or presentation, that's what we wanted. You'll find out later in the meeting that I am going to call a special meeting for February 5th. And so I'll get to those details later. One of the items on that is the reorganization piece.
Okay.
Because obviously, as we've been discussing, since we began discussing, the reorganization piece ties into budget reductions. Yes or no, it's going to impact how and where where the reductions come from. So, that piece, and then the other piece is, remember, then on February 5th, after that vote happens, then will come the presentation of, now we need to do, here's the budget reductions. As Mr. Benty said, they've been working double, basically, saying, here's a plan A with reorganization, here's a plan B without reorganization, and our recommended budget reductions here, right? So that's how that piece is all going to fit together, and that's what we're going to deal with on February 5th, when I get to that. But in the meantime, personally, as a board member, board chair, I would never have a board vote on an agenda item that was just presented that same night. That's not good practice. We still need a couple weeks here to do more research, get feedback, have questions answered, propose more questions, et cetera, before we move on. And so that will be in a special session there. So we go from there. Great question, board members. So
Should we email Mr. Benty and copy whoever has posed the questions? I mean, is that what we
definitely.
want to do? And
Yes.
we can expect the answers before February 5th?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Moore?
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments, I guess. Teachers are going to be implementing this reorganization. I think it's the teachers that are going to be doing it. I think we need to get teachers involved in this reorganization plan. That's my opinion. Yeah, they need to be part of this because they're the ones that are going to be doing this. And I feel they need to be a part of this plan or reorganization. And also, I'm very concerned that parents and teachers, parents will be pulling their students and that teachers might be leaving. And I'm concerned about that. And that's all I'll say.
Can I just piggyback on Ms. Moore's comments? So can you answer today where the staff was or where the parental involvement was, like during the planning process?
So the piece around the reorganization, I met with all buildings in early October and went through, this is what is coming. I opened it up and said, please send me ideas that you have. I told them that I would not be working on the presentation until towards the end of October. I received some feedback from staff that found its way then into my presentation for early November. After that, the board then asked me to meet with staff again when we narrowed it down to the one reorganization option and the one not reorganized option. And then I had 6 community meetings. We had 2 in English, we had 2 that were translated into Spanish, and 2 that had Somali translation at as well. Between those 6, we had a little over 100 families join us to talk about that. I will say that the sentiment from a lot of people coming in, especially our Roosevelt families, when they came in, it was, we don't want to do this. For most of them, when they left, it was still, we don't want to do this, but we understand why it would need to be done. It's that, once again, that tear between the emotional side of what they want and what we need to do. So that's kind of where I think a lot of people is stuck in that realm right now. Does that answer your question?
A little bit.
Anything further, board members, on this report? Mr. Olson?
Yeah, this proposal basically will eliminate neighborhood schools, which I believe in. I've mentioned that. Also, how do you explain to parents when they buy a house, move into a certain boundary like Roosevelt, because that's where they want their child to go, then all of a sudden now they're going to have to go to Lincoln or Jefferson? How do you explain it to them? Those are the ones that are paying the taxes,
Yep.
paying our salaries.
And I will say that I have been in contact with quite a few other superintendents in other districts that are going through the exact same piece right now, where they are either redrawing their boundaries or they are building a school and redrawing their boundaries. It happens quite a bit. This district did it 6, 7 years ago. We redrew all of our elementary boundaries. It is honestly something that happens fairly often in school districts, where either you open a new school and need to redraw your boundaries, or you're closing a school and need to redraw your boundaries. It's just what is needed to do to maintain either the fiscal responsibility of your physical size, or for growth or for lack of growth.
Again, how do you explain it to parents that buy a house in a certain neighborhood,
Yep.
instead of going to the neighborhood of Lincoln or Jefferson? Right, it could apply to them too. They want to be near Lincoln. And then maybe the child has to go to Jefferson. I mean,
Yeah.
but especially the ones over, and it's a newer school, that they buy a house over there and now they're moving to an older school. Because I've had calls with that. So it just, how do you explain to the ones that actually vote, pay the taxes?
I think I would explain it kind of how I said that, this is the situation that the district is in right now. This is the situation, and that's why I sit in kind of a nice seat that my job is to give you options, your job is to vote on them. So I'm just kind of saying, these are the options you have. I'm not saying that we have to reorganize. I'm saying we have to cut $2.9 million. Because that's another piece that the board has tasked me to do, is balance the budget. So to balance the budget, we got to cut $2.9 million. Here's a reorganization option that lessens our footprint and maximizes our physical space in the community. So I think you're right. It's a tough conversation.
Anything further, board members? Hearing none. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you, Mr. Benty, for presentation. Item number 5 is public comment. Ms. Kenny, do we have any public comment? No public comment tonight. Thank you. So with that, board members, I'm looking around the room. We've been here a little more than 2 hours. Would it necessitate if we took a 5-minute recess, or should we continue?
moved.
Okay, Chair issues a 5-minute, I'm holding a 5-minute recess.
Mr. Chair, I have comment.
Pardon me?
I have a public comment.
You didn't sign up. You didn't sign up.
You didn't, we have to sign up and things, Mr. Houston, too.
Oh, you have to sign up.
Yeah, do
I don't know the rules.
Okay. Come to our next meeting, don't say it.
What?
Come to our next meeting for public. Thank you.
Well, the next meeting
Thank you.
That does work. Okay, good. Okay. Thank you, board members, for the recess. We'll go back in session now, please. And so we're to item number 6, the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes from the December 4th and the January 8th, December 4th, 2023 and January 8th, 2024, board meetings, employment, additional assignments, and other authorization of payments, transfers, and invest account, and retirements. We have a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Since there is no discussion with consent agenda, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Move on to item number 7. Mr. Roach.
I would apologize, and I would like to just address one item that was on the consent agenda, and that is Heidi Owens' retirement.
We're going to do we'll do recognition of Heidi Owens' retirement at the end in the board member comments. That's where I'm going to put it from now
Okay,
on.
thank you.
Is that okay, Dr. Okay, that's how we're going to handle that. I too wish to make a few statements there. Okay. Item number 7 is curriculum committee. There's no report. Item number 8, agenda item number 8 is policy committee. And since these committees have board representation, we're asking board members to be the presenters. So for the December 5th meeting, Linda Moore and Cassie Steves, you were on the policy committee, so I'll turn it over to you. Anything you wish to report?
I think the minutes say it all. That was a well-attended but very short meeting. It was all of 8 minutes. So,
How do we get on committees like that?
Yeah, well,
Don't get used to
it
that.
doesn't
That's-
always work that way, no. In fact, I really didn't have any, I just agreed with everything on these policies, and miracles do happen once in a while, so, as I told Mr. Bellingham, so,
Okay.
yeah, uneventful.
I was on there too, so that was. So item 8B is the following policies are presented for the first reading. Board members, any questions on any of those for the first reading? Policy 620, credit for learning. Policy 412, expense reimbursement. Policy 502, search of student lockers, desks, personal possessions, and student person. Policy 526 is hazing, prohibition. Policy 531, the Pledge of Allegiance. Policy 722, public data requests, and Policy 903, visitors, school district buildings, and sites. Since I was on the committee at that time, I believe it was just a review. There were no changes, there were no statute changes, or whatever. It was simply review. So any questions on that, board members? All right, we'll move on to item number 9, other committee reports. The Finance Committee, again, a change here. We have 3 board members who are representatives on this committee, myself, Mr. Wolf, and Ms. Boudreau, and this is a report from the December 2023 Finance Committee, as we just had our Finance Committee meeting last Tuesday morning. Was it Tuesday? Yes. Yes, that's Tuesday morning. So from the December 2023 meeting, other board members, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Olson, or chime in as you were part of that, but we had the minutes. Minutes are pretty self-explanatory of attendance. We went over the 2024 Finance Committee meeting schedule. And then the December 2023 student counts. As you can see from that data, we're under 8. Am I going too fast? Under 8 students there according to the budget.
Mr. Chair, the committee meeting in the agenda is for December 4th on my.
Yes, I just said if, I know you weren't on that committee then, but since you're on
Okay.
now, I know you don't have
Okay.
any input on that, so
Thank you.
tried to clarify that.
tell us all about it.
I wasn't there.
And then from my review of my notes and things from the December meeting, the comparative financial report was, Mr. Wolf helped me out spot on to where we should be, what we normally are, or should be. the December 2023 investment report. You have there, I believe we were down just a little bit on our interest there because of the market. Am I correct on that, Mr. Gertis? I don't have that up on my,
The interest is actually a little higher. Bellingham, our cash balance
was
at the end of November and December is
down a little bit.
for this time of the year.
Right.
Based on cash flows from the state, and also based on the MEG's upgrade system in the state of Minnesota, and the new platform that they're rolling out that's made cashing out a little harder for us.
Great. Thank you. And then anything on the analytics and fund summary? As I think we were virtually right on what our expenditures and things where we should be, according, as we discussed that. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
There, so that's the Finance Committee report. Any questions anyone would have, or it's on board book for the public and things to look at and review, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with everything you said there for December. If you don't mind, I would just like to publicly make a couple comments about our meeting this past Tuesday.
Certainly.
We did discuss items, I believe, items that are going to be up for action here shortly, items 10B, 10C, 10D, and 10E. And I'm only addressing these because we just had this meeting a week ago. And all of these items at Finance, and Ms. Boudreau, feel free to chime in, and Mr. Bellingham as well, but I believe all four of those items were unanimously approved at Finance a week or so
Correct.
ago,
Yes.
or a little less than a week ago. So just an FYI as we get to them, I just wanted to share that with people.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Boudreau.
To that point, I did let Mr. Olson know that we discussed some of the requests that he had for RFP with the architect and the attorney, and just how the vote went, and how I had voted as well, just so he had been informed. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you for that follow-up. I do believe that's, well, stated in the minutes there, and I apologize, Mr. Olson, I was going to get back to you via email on that, because you asked me to put it on the agenda for the finance, and I simply overlooked it, I forgot, so my apologies for that. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, other matters, our gifts, donations, resolution 2021. We have the accepting gifts and donations. I'll read the gifts that have been given here for approval. Tracy Ball, 4 books, How to Catch a Polar Bear, with a value of approximately $75 for elementary and middle school media centers. 4th Avenue United Methodist Church, 60 blankets with $20 gift cards, 8 large bags of coats, hats, and mittens, and 4 boxes of hygiene items for Faribault High School students in need. National Guard Armory, Chris Urick, $2,000 for Falcon backpacks for athletics. Paul and Rhonda Andre, $200 to purchase winter coats for students. Donations for the Nest, from An Earnest Effort Christmas Wish, clothing, hygiene items, and school supplies. Hosanna Church, $2,000. Christ Lutheran Church, $600. Roger and May Golden, $250. So if it I'll entertain a motion for approval of Resolution 2421, accepting gifts and donations.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf, for the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Discussion? As usual, we'd like to thank these people for very generous donations of monetary and supplies. It is greatly appreciated and valued. Anything else, board members? Okay, Ms. Steves, roll call.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Terry Robichaud.
Aye.
Nancy Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Second, 10B, consider approval of the Lincoln School Elementary evacuation site there. And I think since it says presenter, Mr. Gertis, I'd like him to come up if we Ken, Mr. Benty, and if you'd like to present this, Mr. Gertis.
Mr. Chair, do you want a motion first, or you want to?
Thank you very much for that reminder. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the Lincoln Elementary School Emergency Evacuation Site.
So move.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Boudreau had the motion, second by Ms. Steves. Mr. Gertis, if you would give us some details, please.
So, as part of this contract, what we're asking for here is to used to be an old little church, now it's owned by like a senior company that has a little development, to use their building as an evacuation site as part of our emergency evacuation plan. In return, they are asking to use up to 15 parking spots. I believe it is on the north side of the school parking lot at Lincoln Elementary. Not that they'll use 15, but that's what the city said they had to have. So that's what they're kind of technically asking for. So it's just kind of an even swap. No money is changing hands, but that contract kind of solidifies this agreement between the school and Angie's Investment, which is the owner of the building.
Further discussion? Questions? And I think it was pointed out in Finance Committee that that building would not hold all of Lincoln Elementary students, would probably be used for the younger students just directly across the street, and there are other building or other designated spots where the other older students probably would go.
That is correct, Mr. John.
Yep, okay, thank you. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, 10C, consider approval of the 2023-25 Faribault Education Association Memorandum of Agreement. Ms. Yocum, if you would come forward, please. And I'll entertain a motion for approval of this, approval of the 2023 Faribault Education Association Memorandum of Agreement.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And before we begin discussion, Ms. Yocum.
Good evening. So this memorandum of agreement is a piece that we've had in place for about the past 10 years with our teacher union. Basically what it is it allows for a few different things. It allows for an individual who may be close to retirement the opportunity to take a leave of absence and still receive some health insurance and TRA benefits, but not without actually retiring. So they can kind of test it out and see if they want to retire with the option of returning back full-time if they would like to. There's also some benefits to us if an individual meets the retirement eligibility in terms of TRA and their years or their age, then during that next school year, and want to retire during the school year, it becomes problematic for us to try and hire a new teacher mid-year. And so it's to our advantage to have them take a leave of absence rather than retiring mid-year so that we can hire a full-time teacher right at the beginning of the school year and have a consistent person for the entire year. So like I said, we've had this for 10 or 12 years, maybe even longer, and it's been beneficial to both the district and to our members of our teacher union.
Thank you, Ms. Yocum. I think it might be a little longer because I was part of that agreement.
Feels like only
I did,
yesterday.
Not that I did that, yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
I hate to keep bringing that up.
Can I just ask
Mr. Wolf.
or make a comment or ask a question? Ms. Yocum, not only is it beneficial to the district and the staff member, but in the big picture, it's beneficial to the students as well if they don't have to have a new teacher come in at semester time or mid-year. I mean, I think consistency is an important thing and generally a better thing for students. Would you agree?
Absolutely,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, board members? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Nicole. 10D, consider approval of the Faribault Education Center Manager Mr. Pruitt and Ms. Riopel, would you come forward, please? So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the Faribault Education Center manager.
So move.
Thank you. And do we have a second? Motion by Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Steves. And so, Cassie and Zach, I'll let you go through that, please.
Sure, I'll get us started. First off, the Faribault Education Center and the Faribault Adult Education is a point of great excitement and pride for the district. Due to Cassie and her team's leadership, there's been an incredible influx of students who are taking advantage of the programming that's offered there. From the fiscal year 22, there were 342 students. Last year, there were 505 students, and already now, just in January, we're up over 625 students.
670.
70.
Amazing.
So it's really, really exciting, both in the number of students, but I think more importantly in the results that the students are seeing. The program rated second in the state in terms of the percentage of students who earned a measurable skill gain, whether that was a degree or certificate or progressing to the next grade level. And so it's not only the number of students, but the results that are seeing there. And again, just a huge testament to Cassie and her team to the work that's happened there. But because of that increase, additional staffing is needed. And so we're coming to the board to request an FEC manager position. I guess I can talk a little bit about what the role will be like, but just want to reiterate, as on the second page of the memo, that we've been fortunate to receive a series of grants from the state to be able to fund the bulk of the position, as well as some increased revenue we will receive as a result of the higher participation numbers, so there would be no impact on the general fund of the district.
And so, Cassie, maybe we had a little conversation before, explain how you are overwhelmed or not but so busy right now by the amount of students. Okay, I don't want to, but on this, just as why you need this manager with the amount of people coming in right now to.
So we're sitting at about the same amount of staff we had last year and serving twice as many students this year. So this manager position will help me with a lot of different things. The biggest part would be helping manage the grants that we got to help pay for this position. So two of the big grants we got was the Youth at Work grant, which is to support disengaged students from Faribault Public Schools to get them back in school, either get their GED or their diploma. And then we recently just got Pathways to Prosperity. So that's a program, college or career pathway program. So this manager will oversee those programs and assist me in helping coordinate those efforts. And then my hope is to expand our employer-based ESL worksite classes that we have. Right now we have them at Faribault Foods, and then we also have them at TriStar. I would like to expand to businesses. And then we don't have a lot of strong online course offerings, and I know online is where students want to go. So our ESL program, we would like to take that online in the evening if possible. And then I would like to increase the number of volunteers we have to help with all these students, and then someone to help coordinate those volunteer efforts.
Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that was like that there. So, any further discussion or questions, board
Mr.
members?
Chair, where are these students coming from? I mean, why such a...
Great question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. A lot of our students, we worked with the Cradle to Career initiative with the chamber this last year, and we invited 135 students who had been disengaged from Faribault Public Schools since 2020 into our doors, and out of those 135, 99 have registered for either GED or adult diploma, or have registered back into high school or back at the ALC. So just a welcoming text, email, phone call, like, hey, we know you disengaged from Faribault Public Schools, come on back. Our doors are open. So we're seeing a lot of students through that. Zach got us a grant for multicultural adult driver's ed. That's a big number of our students. Adult driver's ed getting their permits, and then behind the wheel to get their road test done and to get their license.
You
Those
have
are
enough.
two big areas.
You have enough capacity at the...
We need human capacity, which is part of
mean,
it.
We have enough space. Yep, the building's full.
Okay.
Yep.
Not overly full?
We would love to have a second floor and have a childcare center up there for our parents. But
Can you do that, put a second floor on?
We'll go back to the motion here.
no, I've dreamt about it. I'm like, we should have had a childcare center here for all of our parents.
The whole nother discussion. Okay. Very good. Anything else, board members?
I just
Yeah.
want to, go ahead, Ms. Moore.
No, you can go.
I would just like to congratulate both of you on the program growth and not only the program growth, but the service that's being provided. And when you just mentioned the numbers you did, those students getting further in education is going to lead to likely more productive citizens in our community, more productive workers, all the above. So just a big thank you to both of you and your team and whoever else is involved. So thanks.
Yes,
Moore?
Mr. Chair, first of all, I do believe this is a very worthy cause, but I have two concerns, and from a broad perspective. You know, what is the top priority of our district right now? And I've got this little thing, it should be reading, math, and I'm talking about our younger students. You know, I think we need to concentrate on the achievement levels of our younger students right now. And I think we may be losing our focus, even though it's very good, but we don't, you know, I just looked at some stats, and I was looking at this recently. These are and this is that 50%. This is our, and I don't want to name the schools, but our elementary schools.
Ms. Moore, I'm going to pull you back a little bit here because we have a
Okay.
motion and a second for approval of this
Okay,
community education director, and I don't think
okay.
that's not germane to the motion here.
But it is germane, and I will
Well,
say that.
in my opinion,
I
it's-
think we have to get our house in order, in working order, before we reach out to the community. We've got over 90 people in administration.
We're going to move on, Ms.
Okay, I want to ask one question, if I
Nope.
may.
Then
The
it
money
has
is
to be
free, but
germane
when
to
the
motion.
grant runs out, what will happen to that person that we got? It's great, because I think it's wonderful. But when the grant runs out, will that person stay? Because it seems when grants run out, the person stays, and it's more of a burden to the district. And right now, with our numbers, I just think, and one teacher brought this idea up, how many administration actually have we brought on in the last 5 years? And how many are still on the payroll once the grant runs out? That's my big concern. And so I will be voting against this because of that. Thank you.
So just for clarity, I think it's important to note that community education funding is designated for community education. It's not funding that we can use for the traditional K-12 school.
But what
day.
happens when we get with these, you know, like with this grant runs out? What will happen to that position? Will it be funded by the community or by Faribault Public Schools?
That would then be decided by the school board. The school board would have to decide if they pull that money out of the general fund. This money is not coming out of the general fund at this point. So if that money in the future were to need to come out of the general fund, the board would decide that.
And then just to explain adult ed funding and how it works. So if we get student contact hours this year, we're paid for those hours the next year. So this could be sustainable if we keep growing at the level we're growing.
So it could be sustainable
Yeah,
then?
and that's my goal, is to make it sustainable. And if we
Okay.
don't get the
If it's
grants,
sustainable,
unfortunately, the
I'm
position will
fine
have to
with
go
it.
away. Yep.
Okay. If it's sustainable, I'm fine with it. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or questions?
Mr. Chair, just to reiterate what Mr. Pruitt was saying, these dollars are not in competition for our pre-K through 12 dollars. Is that correct? Is that what you stated?
That's correct.
So I
Thank
just
you
want to
for
make
the
sure the public knows that.
Okay.
They're not in competition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. 10E, consider approval of the Stuter education contract. First of all, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the Stuter education contract.
So
Also move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. And this is Mr. Benty, you're the presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before you begin, though, I'd just like to add something. From our discussion and from my preview from the Finance Committee last Tuesday and going through the board book here, I view the Stuter as a tool which you wish to use for organization within the district. And so, as Mr. Benty is presenting here, whatever, I'm going to be writing down questions and things as well, but this is how he feels he can organize I believe I don't want to preface anything he said, but the administrative team, et cetera, and how he intends to how he's going to lead the district and organize the district for there. That's just what I wanted to say, and I think that was at the MSBA conference, we talked about that as well, so I just wanted to point that out.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So this work goes back just about a year ago when the board started working on the district-wide goals and stated the need for them. And then the team that you saw up here earlier was a team that sat down along with a few other faces and came up with those goals during the spring and brought those goals to the school board throughout the spring. And then those goals were adopted, I believe, in May or maybe early June by the school board, and we started working on those immediately. So as we went off to summer, I had a group reach out to me known as Stuter, and I didn't know a whole lot about them, so I did some investigating. When staff started coming back in early August, end of July, and we started talking about this, what we come to find out was that we were struggling with how we were going to implement systems to achieve these goals that we had. So one of the things that I did was I started talking with a gentleman at Stuter. They invited us to come to their national conference. They paid for our registration fee and for us to go there. There was a group of, I'm going to say 6 or 7 of us that went to the conference. We were really blown away by what they have to offer, the testimonies that they have. Basically, what you see on the attached pages here is what they have to offer for us. So it said on the one page it says, we understand the goals and key deliverables in bold for this engagement. It has to do with leadership development, key measurable annual district goals. So they work with us on how to achieve our goals. Annual district, department, and school scorecards. So I know Mr. Wolf has been asking for a district-wide school scorecard around, or a dashboard, scorecard, dashboard, same thing, around how we're working towards achieving our goals. Administering stakeholder surveys. Some of that we already do, but they would have a different take on that. They offer 90-day quarterly strategic development, implementation, and review and adjustment cycles. And they basically work with us at more of an administrative level to systemize the work that we do. We've been able to set aside money towards this out of different funds, Title II fund, out of some grant dollars that we've been awarded. And what I'm asking the board for is up to $30,000 to put towards this. I still have some feelers out there to try to cover the addition or the remainder of this, so it may not be that amount, but it will not be more than that amount. Part of this piece as well is if you look at the multi-year scope of services that is down on the second page, in there they talk about integrating leadership development. It's data-driven and it's ongoing. They talk about aligning core practices and processes for implementing a continuous improvement approach across the district. And they also get down to short cycle strategic and action planning. I know the board has been interested in a new strategic plan since ours is probably, I'm going to say, 6 years old, maybe a little bit more than that. And what is set up in this is that they would start working with the board in year 2 of this contract to work on a strategic plan. And the reason that we decided that was because there's potentially a new board that will be sitting here 1 year from now, and they would like to start working with that board versus people that potentially would only have 1 year left. They don't want to do a bunch of work and then have a new board come in and have to restart all that work. So they said from a fiscal point, it makes more sense for them to work with a new board coming in, especially on a strategic plan that might take 9-ish months to get in place. Any other questions that you have, that anyone has?
Is this a yearly contract or just one shot?
This is a yearly contract, and it's set up for a 3-year contract. I've spoken with other districts that they work with. So other districts, Northfield, Farmington, Prior Lake, these districts are also working with Stuter Education. I spoke with their superintendents, and they could not be more pleased with the work that they get from Stuter. And I have had basically a weekly meeting for free with one of their consultants since the end of October, where they have been working with me, walking me through a lot of this stuff, basically, for free to work towards improving our district. So they are incredibly interested in working with a district that demographically looks the way that we look.
Ms. Moore?
Yeah, you said improving our district. Could you expound on that a little bit? I mean, I was looking through this and said one of their main goals is to advance workplace cultures. What culture are we trying to advance? Ours or theirs or what?
No, when they look at the culture in the workplace,
And how,
are people happy to be here? Are people enjoying their time that
All
they
right.
are here? So they do a lot of, that's what they're referring to as work with the culture piece.
okay.
Any other questions, comments, board members?
Uh,
Go ahead, Ms. Moore.
Yes, in the first place, I'm concerned about the, what is it? It's up to 30,000, but then later it says quarterly fees of $18,325.50, and that would be quarterly. So it'd be coming out to about $73,302.
Yep.
In the first place, with maybe I'm confused here, but we really don't have money to spend right now. And, we need to be fiscally responsible. And you talked about workplace, how people are happy, if they're happy, or if they're, what. And so I would like to make a resolution to put aside the Stuter education contract. And I do have this here. Instead, the Faribault Public School Board, Cabinet, and Superintendent maybe to take weekly time over the next few months to discuss classroom problems and possible solutions with teachers and staff. I think these solutions then would be brought before the working session of the board before the end of the present school year for possible implementation. Teachers are our foundation, and I think it's important that we listen to them. But why do we have to have a firm coming in? I think sometimes we can make things too complicated and costly. I think we need to keep it simple. Why can't we take some time at no expense to the district and visit classrooms and listen to the teachers and take heart to any solutions? What's going on in the classroom? Tell us the problems. What do you think the solutions possibly are? Let's talk about this and then bring it back to the board. This is just common sense, and it won't cost us $30,000. Why can't we try this first? What have we got to lose? And I did put that resolution forward, and I just think that we need to step back a little bit and use some common sense, and that's my opinion. So I guess we need a second for that, for the resolution.
First of all, I'm confused about a resolution. Are you talking about an amendment or a
It would
motion
be
to table?
A motion, I guess I would make a motion to do this because we're going to right now vote on this. Right?
We have a motion and a second
Mhm.
for approval of the
And
student.
I would like to,
Okay,
I guess, make an amendment or whatever Robert's
so
rule
do you wish,
says.
do you wish to table it, or do you wish to amend the motion?
I would like to amend that, yes.
Okay, so
to
can
what
I have
said.
can we have the amendment?
Yes. I make an amendment to put aside the Stuter education contract. Instead, the Faribault Public School Board, Cabinet, and Superintendent take weekly time over the next 2 months to discuss classroom problems and possible solutions with teachers and staff. These solutions will then be brought before the working session of the board before the end of the present year for possible implementation. That's my amendment.
Ms. Kenny, did you get that?
I have it right
I
here
did
if
not.
you'd like it. I can pass it around. I got it. Okay.
So board members, okay, so I'll ask this. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for that amendment. So with that amendment, did everyone, I'm not sure, I didn't hear.
Here,
I'm not sure all the words. if we could make do you have copies?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'd like a roll call, please.
Mr. Chair, I honestly interpret this as a table.
Yes.
Because if we're not moving, I believe what Ms. Moore is suggesting is, as she states, put aside the Stuter contract, which in essence I believe is table, or to not move forward with it and do
Okay,
something
is that
else.
how we would, okay.
But maybe I'm reading it wrong or interpreting it wrong.
How I'm interpreting it, Mr. Wolf and Ms. Moore and board members, I see it as kind of two motions in one, to put a motion to table the Stuter education contract, and then another motion or an amendment to this of taking weekly time over the next 2 months to discuss classroom problems and possible solutions with teachers and staffs. But
So we have have to vote on two things then? Correct?
well, we have to, unless you wish to withdraw this motion because I'm considering it an amendment.
Okay.
So if you wish to withdraw this amendment and restate the amendment, or if you wish for us to vote on this amendment.
So,
We'd vote on the amendment as stated, as you just passed out, the typed copy right here.
okay, that's fine.
That's what you want to do?
Yeah.
Am I making it clear, Ms. Moore?
I think so. I guess what you're saying is that I have two sentences here, and they're both separate, correct?
Yes,
Well,
that's how I interpret it.
okay, yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is that I think we should not spend the money and just take some time over the next few months, as I said, to discuss the problems with the teachers. And then bring it back into a working session before the end of the year. I think that would save some money, and keep it simple.
Okay, so I'm interpreting, so we have a motion for we have an amendment here, and we have a second to the amendment to the original motion. So is there any further discussion?
And roll call, please.
I will do that.
You.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just have a comment. This has multiple action items here. It's, one is to put aside the resolution, but then take time in 2 months to discuss classroom problems and solutions with teachers. And then the solutions are going to be brought before the board for possible implementation. That's several steps, and it's more than just a simple amendment. I'm also a bit concerned that we are micromanaging our cabinet and our superintendent in this fashion. I don't think that's our role, and that's my concern.
Thank you. I guess we're just going to vote on I understand what you're saying, Ms. Boudreaux, so we'll vote on the amendment, however it is or isn't. Any further discussion? Last call. Ms. Steves, will you do a roll call, please?
No,
Let me, before you clarify. So a yes vote will be in favor of the amendment. A no vote would be not in favor of the amendment. I just wanted to clarify that. So I'm sorry, Cassie, go ahead.
Linda Boudreaux?
no.
Linda Moore?
Yes.
Richard Olson?
Yes.
Jerry Robichaud?
No.
Cassie Steves, no. Chad Wolf?
No.
John Bellington?
No.
Bailey?
Okay, thank you. So we're back to the original motion here of approval of the Stuter education contract. A motion by myself and a second by Mr. Wolf.
Roll call, please.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreaux?
this is something that I had the opportunity to speak with Superintendent about at my meeting with him this month, and I learned that, there is a need for this, to coordinate all of our, coordinate strategically how we approach challenges such as system development, as the superintendent mentioned, it looks like this would give our cabinet 8 days of consultation each year. 8 days. And then for the strategic plan, it would be 4 days. They would actually invest and lead the strategic planning, which I'm looking forward to. This is about leadership development, measurable district goals, scorecards for progress monitoring, strategy development, review, and adjustment if the development isn't going in the proper approach. It does involve reporting the results to us and working with the board as well. So my question is, we are already spending money on training and staff development for our staff, our entire staff. I mean, I guess I'm asking, is some of this in lieu of what we're spending now would be directed towards this proposal? I just remember with getting a list of all the development that our staff went to from previous superintendent, and it was extensive. And so I guess my question is probably to superintendent. I don't know what we're spending now on staff development. If we're spending like we were when I had the list, it was excessive in my view.
So we still have staff development budget, all right? And those are mandated on what we have and what they're set up for. The vast majority of our staff development budget is directed towards staff development for our teachers, right? This Stuter education group is directed more towards the staff development for our administration and how we run systems and how we basically come together as one organization, and then it filters down into our schools and into our teaching areas. So they're not directly working with teachers, they are directly working with administration. So the difference is that it is still staff development, but it's at the administration level versus the teacher level.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm not sure how to say this, but I'm very supportive of the leadership development at the administration level. I'm supportive of it at any level. It just further highlights that not everything that we approve is books and color crayons. But I will support this. That's all I have.
Further discussion, Dr. Robichaud.
Chair, thank you. Basically, when I take a look at the deliverables that Stuter is going to present, I see it as a return on our investment for our leadership.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we spoke about this at the Finance Committee, and this is a difficult add and a request as we look at cutting budget reductions, right? There's no doubt about that. You can't hide from that fact. At the same token, we also have to continue to invest in things that we think are going to have a good return on our investment. Would it be great if we had somebody that could do all this internally? Absolutely. But if we had that person, I don't know what they'd be doing other. You know what I mean? Their plate is full. I think all our administrators' plates are full. Our cabinet members are full. And, we want change. We want better results. I'm very hopeful that this will lead to that. No guarantees, but I'm supportive of it, and hopefully it moves the needle with student achievement. And also, as Ms. Boudreau had mentioned, a new strategic plan. I totally understand their thought process by having that strategic plan start next year. I mean, I understand that. And once again, I think we have to recognize the optics of it, but I do think it's important that I'm going to approve it because I think there's a great return on investment here. So.
Yeah. Mr. Olson.
Mr. Chair, question, does MSBA have services like this? Since we pay dues to them, I'm just wondering, I do not know the answer.
I'm going to say no. I don't believe they do. They go-
MSBA has staff development towards board members,
Yes.
not towards district or school administration.
I know they help years ago with strategic plan. That's with
That they do,
of the
yes.
board.
That they do, but it's through
But
the
that's-
board lens,
Okay.
not through another, yes.
Further discussion? Again, from my viewpoint, kind of echo what many of you have said. As I previously stated, I believe Mr. Benty believes this is a tool he would like to have in his toolbox here to implement in our leadership with our district. He's now in his 18 months as we go through, and he's established this is how he wishes to proceed and how we can how can we organize the district, not reorganize, and all that. So we'll go from there. So roll call has been requested. So Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
No.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye, Chad Wolf,
Aye.
Sean Bellingham.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Steves. We'll move on to item number 11, other items of information, report school board members. Anything anyone would like to share? Dr. Robichaud.
I want to go back to the retirement of Heidi
Thank you.
Owens. I have gotten to know Heidi over the last few years as somebody who has devoted 3 full-time jobs into one person. And that's her work with the AVID program, her work with the administration, and then also as treasurer of FABCETA. She never missed a beat, and she's going to be very difficult to replace when it comes to FABCETA, and I know the AVID as well. So we wish her the very best in her retirement. She's been a dedicated employee in this district for a number of years. So I really appreciated what she's offered for the betterment of our educational program.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud, for the reminder. I didn't write that down, so I forgot. But anyone else? I wish to echo what Dr. Robichaud said. I've known Heidi in this district when she taught social studies at high school, and we had 612 social studies department meetings, and what a leader, both in the AVID program, but as a department chair, is within the social studies department, within the district overall, and just a great teacher and a good friend. So I wish her nothing but the best as she retires and moves on as well. So, like that. Any other items of information?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say I got to know Heidi when I was on the FEEP committee, meeting here at 7 a.m., and she let me in. And I just want to thank her for her 22 years of service, but also for her kindness and just welcoming me. And she was one of few that did that. I appreciated it.
Great, thank you.
So
Anyone
I
else?
met Ms. Onis when I was a 10th grade student at Faribault High School. I was not a high achiever, a high flyer, but I just remember being so impressed by her kindness. And then, I grew up and met her again, and again, same thing, very impressed by her kindness. She's one of those people that you just need to have in your back pocket.
That's right.
I appreciate all that she's done for our district.
Yeah, Mr. Bellingham, just thank her for all of her service and echo everything that's been said, and just wish her absolutely nothing but the best in whatever the next chapter holds. So,
That's right. Any other items of information? Okay, we'll move on to 11B, Mr. Benty.
So holding with what everyone else has said, I echo everything that everyone said about Heidi Onis. She is an amazing colleague and an amazing coworker, and I've had the luxury of being able to say that she's even a better friend. So I thank her for all of her service at Faribault Public Schools, and she will be truly missed. So thank you, Heidi. I have an award. This is presented upon completion of Minnesota School Board Association School Board Workshops Series, Phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right. This is for Dr. Linda Moore. So,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
So you've completed all 4 phases of MSBA's
Yes.
training in almost exactly 1 year. So that's pretty impressive. So,
Mr.
Well,
Chair,
thank you.
congratulations, Linda, but
Thank you.
I also completed all 4.
Yeah, I think she did.
So just for the next.
I think you, Linda, I think you finished after me, so probably
Probably
that's
at
coming,
this
I'm
summer.
I'm guessing.
I'm sure it's in the
Because this took a
mail.
while, because this took a while too, actually.
Just
I'd
want to get
forgotten
it in
about it.
there.
I'm sure yours is coming.
Yeah,
It's coming.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
in the mail.
To continue, myself, along with Cassie Steves and John Bellingham, went to the Minnesota School Board Association's Winter Conference. Was it not last week, the week before?
10th and 11th.
10th and 11th.
10th, 11th, 12th.
Had a good time, very great sessions. Always a great time for school board members and superintendents to be able to converse with other superintendents and other school board members and kind of see what the job is like outside of Faribault. So that was a fun time had by all. And then today I met with Senator John Jasinski to talk about the upcoming session, talking about what concerns our district has when it comes to what is the upcoming session. Once again, it's not a budgeting year, it is a bonding year, but we also know with as many bills as were passed into law last spring, there are most likely going to be a lot of language pieces that come up and some fixes to things. I am not banking on any additional money, but we're hoping that we can potentially get some language that might translate into some dollars for us, but I don't foresee anything substantial. So that's not something I'm going to include in any of our budget discussions, just so everybody knows. It was great meeting with Senator Jasinski. He's heavily involved in especially the transportation pieces, but he's always willing to listen, especially to educators around what our needs are. So, and with that, Mr. Chair, that is all I have.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I did not have this written down, and so I realize I'm out of order. But I want to publicly thank Ms. Steves for all of her efforts in helping lead a cohort to get additional childcare in this community. And I think it was late last week, there was an article in the paper. It appeared that you had some big hitters here in town. And so anyway, I just want to thank you for your efforts. Without a doubt, there is a need in this community, as most of you know, and there's quite frankly a need in a lot of communities. But for you to be able to pull those people together, I just want to applaud you and thank you for all your efforts.
Well, thank you. More information to come. We might get that daycare center above education.
Second floor.
Anything else, Mr. Benty?
No, that's all.
Because we kind of took over there, I guess, okay. So item 12, dates to remember. There's going to be some changes here. So February 5th, 2024, 5:30 p.m., I'm now calling a special meeting at 5:30 p.m. In that meeting, there will be 3 agenda items. One is to vote on reorganization. The second item will be approval to go ahead with the, for bids of the McKinley remodel. And obviously that if the reorganization does not pass, the McKinley remodel is moot. If it doesn't pass, then we don't remodel McKinley there, but that's to be dependent on the reorganization. And the last one will be a resolution to approve the Superintendent Evaluation Committee as a board committee, which it is not at this point. So it'll be 3 items on the special meeting. 1, the reorganization and a vote there. Second, the approval to go ahead with the McKinley remodel bid. And third will be a resolution to put the Superintendent Evaluation Committee on the as a school board committee. Those things need to happen before it gets sent to policy committee there. After the conclusion of that meeting, the special meeting will be our work session. February 6th, 2024, 3:45 p.m. is the policy meeting. February 12th, 2024, 7:30 a.m. It's virtual, the Finance Committee meeting. February 20th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. the Board Business meeting. And it says, note the meeting is scheduled for Tuesday rather than because of the legal holiday on Monday. Okay?
So
Yes.
just, oh,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Ms.
Ken.
Steves.
I will be out of town on the 20th.
We have a couple of them
And
there.
Mr. Chair, I will not be here on the 20th either.
I know we have a couple board members that will not.
I'm not coaching basketball, though. I'm on vacation.
Okay, we'll move to item number 13, a motion to move to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D-05, Subdivision 3A for the superintendent mid-year review. Could I have a motion for that, please?
So move.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Steves. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll go into closed session as soon as we clear the room.